Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the 3 o'clock meeting for Tuesday the 19th. I'd like to do a roll call, and I'll just go down the screen that I see. Commissioner Sheffer.
Here.
Commissioner Kaluzzi.
Here.
Commissioner Szymanski.
Here.
Commissioner Schlosser.
Present.
Commissioner Gay.
Here.
Commissioner Byrne.
Here.
And the chair is here. I'm going to put you on mute for now and go over the agenda. Basically, as you notice on the agenda, there is correspondence from 3 different people, and it basically goes into a bit of what we're discussing today, as well as masks, as well as short-term rentals. But those are all be on file with the agenda. The purpose of this special meeting, again, is to further discussion and possible vote of the Commissioner's comprehensive action plan and moving forward with reopening the city. As we mentioned in the last meeting, kind of our 3 assignments for today were first, a second homeowner letter, second, a testing letter recommendation, and then the third being the comprehensive plan being set out by Main Street on reopening the downtown economic situation. Before I actually go into the homeowner's letter, I just want to make sure you all saw what we sent out today. Is the governor had a meeting this morning, 10:45, for about an hour with the mayors across the state, and they basically announced that he's doing some additional interim steps to try to help the jumpstart the economy. The first thing that he pointed out is that going forward as of tomorrow morning, all retail establishments may operate by appointment beginning tomorrow. That's all the non-essential businesses that were allowed to, in the last declaration, open up for curbside service. He is now taking it one step forward that all of these retail retail operations can open by appointment. And then additionally, he has said that restaurants, as of June 1st, restaurants can apply to expand outdoor seating, again, effective June 1st. Now, basically, these restaurants are scheduled to open their indoor spaces at 30% of stated fire capacity. The capacity that's listed for this governor's declaration is based upon what the fire marshal says the capacity of the interior of any restaurant is. I know someone had a question on that. Now, the governor is, at this point in time, with his staff, putting together an application for a restaurant, food establishment, to apply to a local municipality to extend seating outdoors. And that's above and beyond the patios or decks that they presently have. And this is for other restaurants that do not have patios or decks. Again, there will be an application that's going to come out to us by Friday morning. These applications will need to be filled out by each and every business that asks for additional seating outside. These applications will have to be approved by the city. And if any of these applications are from businesses that have liquor licenses and they would like to extend their liquor license out onto the sidewalk, that application, once approved by the city, will be pushed forward to the ABC, the Alcoholic Beverage Control Commission, for their approval, and then come back to the city. Now, again, there will be specifics that are in these applications. Again, we don't have it right now, but I'm sure the specifics of the application will list a drawing, how many tables, how much space you need, what type of barrier you'll put in, so on and so forth. But it's yet to be seen on those applications. I just wanted to get that out to you all, and because obviously that's the major part of our discussion today is on things about outdoor seating and parking. So with that, Nothing, the only thing that came out of the governor's call otherwise was the fact that they are doing, they have been slowing the testing in Kent County and Newcastle because their concentration for testing has been in Sussex. They are now starting to move back up to do a little bit more testing in Kent and Newcastle. So there'll be less testing available in Sussex. And the metrics, he didn't speak about the metrics really too much today. He was just trying to get out this information on the retail business and the restaurants. So with that, I'm going to turn right to Commissioner Gay on the second homeowner letter. I know Commissioner Gay has been working with the communications director on this, and I will open it up to your conversation, please.
Thank you very much, Mayor. First of all, I know that the draft is not posted on the agenda. Is it your expectation that I would read it, or that I would just make some opening comments and then go straight to discussion?
I would say just your comments and then go to discussion, because hopefully all the commissioners have had the opportunity to review.
Right. Yeah. And it contains much of what we talked about last week, but just by way of introduction and also bringing it forward to where we are now, because it's very obvious that the governor's is getting pressure from all sources of the, all areas of the state and all sources of the economy to reopen. So, our letter goes right in with that. But I had first of all, there are no dates in this letter. Did that intentionally because for a couple of reasons. One, I think most homeowners would like to see it opened up to them as soon as possible, yesterday. But wanting to be flexible, and the governor so far has been saying, nothing before June 1. So wanting to be flexible, we didn't put a date in. It's basically as soon as, he's comfortable and agrees with our points, which frankly, I think we together last week came up with some very strong points. And I would like to think that this would be successful in getting some relief. However, I just finished listening to his press conference today that he started about an hour ago and is just now ending. And he made it very clear in that conference that he wants to still limit, he wants a phased in approach. He still wants to limit crowds. And one of the things he said, and one of the reasons I guess I hope the letter will be successful, is he keeps referring to the onslaught of people, and he keeps referring to the wild onslaught of people. And I don't know about the rest of you, but I don't consider our homeowners to be any kind of onslaught, wild or otherwise. I consider them, contributing members, taxpaying members, obviously, of our community, and for the most part, going about their work in their homes, and certainly going to the beach and boardwalk, but not to the extent that crowds of visitors would. So the theme of the letter is about their contributions to the city, but also to contrast, and this is really important for the governor's phased in approach, and that is to contrast our homeowners with all the other out-of-state travelers. The homeowners are a small subset of all out-of-state travelers. And as I said before, they are taxpayers, they are contributors to the community, they have every right to be here. But the focus of the letter was in trying to keep the phased-in approach as we know that is his primary objective, while underscoring the fact that it really is a small subset that we're asking for. And I guess the only other thing I would add to that is, in one place in here, I mentioned a precedent of another area, and that's the Outer Banks. Because, for a while, they were able to limit their area to residents because there's only one road in and out of the area. So I get that they were able to do that easier than Delaware could. Nevertheless, when they opened up to homeowners about 2 weeks before they opened up to rentals. So there's precedent there. In addition to that, Cape May and Ocean City, New Jersey have done similar, where they have opened up even their rentals to seasonal first. So 3 month or more are open, I think maybe soon, and maybe even this weekend, I can't remember. And then homeowners were never, were never prohibited from going there, but the rest of the rentals are later. The short-term rentals are later. So there is a precedent for multiple communities to do this kind of a phased opening approach.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, comments? I see Commissioner Schlosser, you have your hand up.
Oh, thanks, Mayor. Thanks for, I do appreciate everybody coming to consensus when I brought up this letter last week. It was, and Susan, thank you for crafting it. I think more than ever, it needs to get out. Like, I hope this afternoon we can come to consensus. And Commissioner Schnelski will talk a little bit about the businesses in Main Street, but talking to and walking around town yesterday with the businesses, as you know, they're hurting. We'll get into that. But one of the things they also said is that what keeps them alive really May and June is the second homeowners. So this is timely in many ways, what Commissioner Gay laid out already very well, as well as that feedback. So my only suggestion is there was a sentence in there that said in bullet 7, the short-term rental ban may still be important as part of non-essential travel ban to control the number of people to the beach in the early stage of recovery. I don't recall coming to any kind of consensus on that. Personally, I believe that should be lifted or a date as soon as possible. So I don't think it adds anything. I think it distracts actually from the letter that's well written, and it's one topic. It's not about short-term rental bans. It's about, letting our second homeowners in. So I strongly recommend we take that out. It's just conflating, it's disrupting the overall message. So I thought the letter was fine, except I really believe that that sentence has to come out. This is not about short-term rental bans. I don't agree with it. We didn't talk about it. We didn't come to consensus on that being our agreement. So I think it needs to be removed.
I agree with that.
Along those lines, and I'll take your questions in a moment. I did send a couple things out to you, and I think you've probably seen them from the Sussex County Association of Realtors, and then Kent and Sussex legislators just sent something to the governor. And again, they're pressing hard on the second short-term rental ban. And I think I've mentioned it personally. I know some of the ACT members have mentioned it. I mentioned it again today on the call. I tend to agree that the most important thing that we want to get out of this letter is for the governor to understand our second homeowners here in Rehoboth, and hopefully even thinks about the other communities, but most importantly, Rehoboth. And I think that needs to be our focus. I think he has had a number of different letters, whether it's from the Delaware Association of Realtors, the Sussex County, and now legislators. And when I asked him about it today, apparently there is also someone, I think actually in Dewey Beach, property owner, actually suing him in federal court. So he didn't want to speak about it much more from a legal perspective. And I think it might be best for us to get his attention by focusing only on the second homeowners. And I understand that may be a bit distracting for him. And I think this letter is very important to get the word out on the second homeowners. Yeah. Commissioner Calusi, you had something to say?
Oh, I just said I agree with Commissioner Schlosser that we should be silent on that. It just detracts, and there's plenty of other people. As you say, Sussex County Association of Realtors, Delaware Association, they're all looking at the short-term rentals and dealing with that. We need to come out strong for our second property, or our part-time residents, if you will. So I'm agreed. I agree to that. But I think the letter you did put together, Susan, was wonderful. So
thank you.
Other than that, I think
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Commissioner Wisnowski, you have your hand up, please.
Yes, I agreed. Thank you, Commissioner Gay, that the letter was very well written. I agree with Commissioners Calusi and Schlosser that the one sentence about short-term rentals should be removed. Otherwise, I'm fine with the letter to be sent.
Mm-hmm. Okay, others?
Mayor, it looks like there's a couple hands up.
Yeah, but he's got an audio problem. Sounds like.
It looks like Dick's offline, I mean, unmuted.
Yeah,
And
Well, I'm happy to make a comment.
yeah, but Paul's not.
I think the
The
mayor
mayor's
is
saying
having
time out.
problems. He just
Right.
wants to time out for a moment.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Susan, I think it was really well written too.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a couple things, a question about how to reword something, but I'll wait. I want to wait till the end to hear from everybody. But I have a question about that.
Thought it was conveyed what we needed it to convey,
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
that's what does some good.
I apologize, I cut us off again. I still got to get used to this technology. Commissioner Byrne, you had your hand up, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to reiterate what my colleagues have said so far. I think it's an outstanding letter. It gets at the many points that we discussed just a few days ago. Thank you, Susan. But I would also advocate for taking that statement on short-term rental ban out. It just distracts from the main focus and the point that we want to make. And I'm hopeful we can get this letter out today to the governor. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Byrne. Commissioner Sheffer, please.
Yeah, I concur with what everybody else has said as far as the high quality of the letter and the edit that we all agree needs to be made.
Okay, I have a question about that.
Thank
Actually, and let me ask you a question about that. First of all, part of the reason that was in there was to emphasize that we recognize that he's looking at all out-of-state travelers collectively, and that he shouldn't. In other words, so I was trying to appeal to his objective while at the same time setting homeowners apart. But having said that, there's actually two sentences in that bullet, and I can see why the way it's worded now makes it sound like we're taking a position where we don't want to do that. The other message in that bullet was that by allowing the owners of those homes, meaning homes that are to be rented, to come in first means that they will further contribute to our local economy as they prepare their homes for guests. So do we want to say, instead of saying the short-term rental may still be important, just say that until short-term rentals are allowed back, allowing the owners to come in first?
I don't think we should mention it at all. I like the second sentence. I only recommended the first sentence be taken out. I thought your second sentence in that same bullet conveyed that exact thought. That was my thought.
I don't know if it'll stand alone.
There's like a period and a capitalization.
Well, it says allowing the owners of those homes. So without the first sentence, I might have to wordsmith a little bit of the sentence just so you know what I'm talking about.
I just wouldn't mention short-term rental ban at all, especially for many reasons. But I like the second sentence, even if you have to tweak it a little bit. I thought it
confirmed that should stay in there.
I would suggest that we take both sentences.
Yeah.
Oh,
I think it just distracts from the main point.
okay.
I can live with that.
Part of it was that, and this was something we talked about last week. Part of it was that if you have the short-term rentals come back the same time the homeowners come back, that it actually deprives the rental owners of the income because they have to come in first to get ready. But and I actually tried to say that, and then it was too clunky, and I took it out. So, but I can just take the whole thing out, the whole concept out.
That sounds like there's a consensus to do that, Susan. So if you could, and it's okay with everybody, if you could, and then send that draft to Margaret, and she'll put it on city stationery.
Okay.
Does that work? That works for everybody?
Yeah, that's fine.
And then just to confirm, I'll take that entire bullet out, and it actually leaves 7 others. So I guess we still have a lot of points to make, and I appreciate all the feedback.
All good points.
Chris Johnson's help on it too.
Yep, good point. All right, thank you very much, everybody. We're going to move on to the second item. Commissioner Byrne talked last week, and the commissioners tended to agree about asking about testing. And I'll turn it over to Commissioner Byrne, but I think I've got some answers as well. But Commissioner Byrne, if you could speak to the issue, and then we'll talk a little bit more.
Sure, thanks, Mayor. I think it is a critical issue. I won't go through everything that I said the last 2 meetings. I think it's clear that a healthy economy requires a healthy community. And a critical way that we have learned nationwide and across many, many communities is that testing with follow-up contact tracing is a critical step. All public health officials are in agreement. So over the weekend, the mayor reached out to the Department of Public Health and to the governor's office and raised the issue that we had collectively raised. And I was ready to put a letter together once we got a little baseline information from the governor's office. And governor's office came back on Sunday, and let me just quote what was in writing. This comes from the governor's office and the Department of Public Health. The rate of testing in the beach communities is high compared to the rest of the state. So doing more wide-scale testing right now isn't supported by the data. But the Department of Public Health will keep a close eye on the situation. So that definitely is what we want them to do. Again, we will be bringing into our community a great many, dozens, if not hundreds, of service industry workers that live in other parts of our state, and probably and likely many live in some of the hot spots. Hopefully, in the thousands of tests that they have been doing in those communities, and the governor stated today very clearly, he said that thousands of poultry workers, their family members, and their community members have been tested to date, and they're continuing to do that. And that hospitalizations in those communities are decreasing. So that's all very good, and it looks good for us. However, I think that not only the service industry folks that'll be coming in, working in our kitchens, working in the hotel rooms, the motel rooms, eventually the rental homes, as well as our own frontline workers, our own police force, our own fire department, our municipal workers who are out on the streets and sanitation departments that are face to face with the public. And as the public grows and as the numbers grow on our streets, I think we need to continue to monitor the data and the numbers very, very closely. The whole key would be to provide easy, no-cost access to testing. Now, the other thing that I found that's very encouraging is that Dr. David Tam, who is the CEO and administrator at BB, has been putting out a number of papers online, and it's been very encouraging what he's been saying. So just a day or two ago, he put out some information again, reiterating what BB's been saying all along, and that is that BB runs a COVID-19 screening hotline for those that do not have access to a primary care physician. And that's likely many of the folks that will be coming into our town, and perhaps many that are second homeowners here, that are on our police force, fire force. And so there is a number, 302-645-3200. It's a simple call. They will screen online. If they feel that that person should be tested, they will give you a local location, and you can do a drive-through test. And most of those are taking place on one of the BB campuses. So that's been going on since very late March. And we just need to continue to remind ourselves, and I think continue to put out publicly, that that service from BB is available. It's easy, it's no cost, and it's available for anyone who does not have a phone number of their own physician to call first. There's no questions asked. It's a screening on the phone, and if they feel that the situation merits it, then there is drive-through testing available. Again, it's 302-645-3200. 3,200, and I think we need to continue to promote them. And I hope that our employers, our retailers, and our restaurants will give that information out to all of their employees. So that's where I'm at, Mayor. I think we continue to monitor the situation closely. At any given day that we feel it's not going well, I'm prepared to draft a letter for us to get off immediately to the governor.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Byrne. Any Commissioner Calusi, you have your hand up, please.
Yes. One of the things I think we might consider doing, that's news to me. I didn't know that was exactly what they were doing at BB, and maybe other business owners don't know that. I think it might be something that would be useful if we could send a letter to our business owners saying, did you know that testing is available for your workers or for anyone, and to go through this process? And then hopefully they would strongly suggest to their workers that they go through this procedure by calling and going to get tested. So a letter to them to just let them know that this is available, I think would be a good thing for us to send.
Yeah, and that letter should also go to the chamber, because they're putting out alerts once or twice a day.
Well, right, that's actually probably even better way to do it.
Main Street, I'm sure, is putting out information to all of their members. So any way that this can get out, I think, is critical. And you know, we see in the media constantly that across the nation, many employers are temperature testing as employees walk in the door every day. Anyone that's, you know, much over 99 is sent home or sent to be tested.
All right, I will work with our communications department and look into that. Obviously, I think we have seen a number of things, as Commissioner Byrne mentioned, from Mr. Tam about the ability for testing. Obviously, a lot of it has to do with if you have the symptoms and you have a doctor, you can go and your doctor can ask for one. But having those drive-in clinics is also very good, and I think getting that information will be very helpful. And I think the business community then can distribute it to their people as well. Thank you. I think Commissioner Szymanski, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just ask that we continue to fight and talk to the Department of Public Health and the governor in trying to get more testing, specifically for our workers and the employees here in the city. You know, I don't think that people realize or appreciate, you know, that in just a couple weeks we could have tens of thousands of people here and hundreds to thousands of workers, and it only takes one infected worker in our town to infect dozens and dozens of, maybe hundreds of others, and the negative impact that could have on us as a community, and you know, we could be known as sort of a hot spot spread area ever, you know. So I just think we need to keep fighting for it and get the folks that make the decisions to listen. You know, we could potentially, one infected person here in the summer could spread very rapidly. So that's
the last thing that we want to have happen, as everyone's working together to carefully, cautiously, safely roll out things, is to have to take a step back, to have to start closing things back down. And so, you know, this is preventative. You don't wait to become a hotspot. You do this for prevention of the continuing growth and rolling out of our businesses, and very, very critically, prevention of the virus spreading into our community of residents.
We will continue to monitor it with the Department of Health. Thank you very much, everybody. We're going to move right into the third and major portion of this discussion, and I'm going to turn it right over to Commissioner Krasnowski. And I'm hoping everyone got the executive summary that Commissioner sent out today, and I'm sure he's going to have a lot to discuss on it. Open it up to you, Edward, please.
Sure. Before I dive into what we've done over the past few days and the executive summary, I think there's two things that if maybe we could talk about before going into that. And one is the enforcement of wearing of masks and social distancing. Because I think there's a lot of confusion out in the community. I'm certainly hearing it. That people are not wearing masks, but they thought the governor's order said they're supposed to. And you guys, you guys being the commissioners or the city, made it a civil offense so that you could enforce these types of things. So I think if we could just get maybe some clarification from the chief on what we're enforcing and not enforcing when it comes to masks and social distancing. And then also some clarification.
Could I just make
a
comment on that, please? Because you've brought up a very important point. And in the governor's press conference today, while he mistakenly commented on that early on, toward the end of the conference, he came back 2 or 3 times and strongly said that masks are required on the boardwalk. On boardwalks and recommended on the beach. So the message from the governor today, just a half hour ago, was very, very clear. And of course, the issue for us is, how is that communicated? How is it enforced?
Right. And to that point, I believe the way the governor's order, at least not the last one about the beach and boardwalk specifically, but the one prior to that, I don't know exactly what modification it was. I think was pretty clear that, say Rehoboth Avenue is a public space and it's required there as well because social distancing isn't really, it's not something that you can really do, walking in crowds. So I just think we need some clarification and communication out to the public on, are we enforcing it or are we not, et cetera. So Chief, if you want to weigh in.
I'm sorry. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. Yes, as far as the enforcement, we started trying to enforce some of the boardwalk wearing of masks last week, and then because that's what you guys had required as commissioners and voted the week prior. However, with the governor's order, it became very confusing to people that were visiting this weekend when the boardwalk was opened up. So I kind of stopped back and said, okay, with the confusion, it's hard to prosecute in a courtroom because so much information was out there. We were saying it, but the governor had put a different date on it. Moving forward, we have signs coming for the beach, be there about the recommendation of wearing the face mask as well as social distancing. On the boardwalk, we'll have signs up there saying it's required. They will be going up this week. Hopefully we get them there by Friday morning. But yes, we will be enforcing that. As soon as the signs go up and in place, we will be enforcing on the boardwalk. As far as the sidewalk, like Rehoboth Avenue, it's going to be difficult. Our resources are going to be mainly up on the boardwalk because our resources are limited. So that's where we're going to have to keep officers up there to ask for to help with social distancing as well as to enforce the mask. The reality is, are we going to get 100% compliance? No. Are we going to be able to arrest 100% of the people? No. But we will sit there and definitely do our best and give them warnings first and ask them to exit the boardwalk if they don't have a mask or refuse to. And if they don't put one on or have one after that, then they will be cited, or we'll cite as many as that we can. So I don't know if that answers your question. We are prepared to do that. We didn't this past week because the governor's was a little bit different than ours, and there was just a lot of confusion, and we didn't have all the signage up there.
Right.
I appreciate that, Chief. And I don't want to see a lot of tickets written, and I don't want to be a police state, but we need to help drive behavior, because I know a lot of businesses that they're already struggling, and they said my staff is so scared, we're just going to close the door if more people walk in without a mask. So
Well, can't they post on their door that, I think businesses, since it's private property, they are able to say masks are required to enter this store.
Well, that's a state requirement anyway.
Yeah.
It is a state requirement, and it gives, I definitely recommend that businesses put that on their doors and windows as much as possible, because again, that will help reinforce, and at the same time, it will help us, and it could move into a trespass situation if they don't want them in there and somebody refuses and still continues in there.
Thank you, Chief. Do you have a timing on when those may be coming up that you feel comfortable enforcing at that point, the signs?
We're hoping to be receiving it in Thursday afternoon to Friday morning, and with the help of Public Works, we will get those up right away.
Okay. All right, thank you. Mayor, I guess I'd ask if there's any more comments about masks or social distancing, and then I can go on to the next topic.
Commissioner Schiffer, you got your hand up.
Yeah, I think we just have to be careful about giving mixed messages. We can't ask the chief what he and his team are going to do about enforcing the rules about masks and then say we don't want tickets to be written. So, we can't have it both ways. I think if we say it's going to be enforced, and the chief has already said what his approach is, as far as politely reminding people, being ambassadors first. But at the end of the day, if there are enough people who aren't adhering to the rules, he and his team are going to be left with no choice.
Yeah, completely agree. I think when I said I don't want a ton of tickets being written and it being a police state, that was just in an ideal situation. I wish there wasn't a need for the chief to be enforcing, it was my point. Sorry if that came off
We understand.
the wrong
way. Commissioner Schlosser, you have your hand up.
Yeah, just really quick. I fully support what Commissioner Schnowski said and everybody said. Whatever we can do. And Chief, I know you're on top of it with the enforcement, but I just had a clarification question for Commissioner Schnowski. Are you suggesting, or did you want to discuss actually making it mandatory on Rehoboth Avenue? Or I heard the chief say it'd be very difficult to enforce there, but I just wanted to clarify that point. Do you think we should consider going that far, or were you just kind of mentioning that we should try to enforce there the best we can?
I think that the governor's modification of the declaration of emergency, whatever one it was, I don't know. I think it included Rehoboth Avenue as a public space. So I don't think it's for us to decide whether it should be or shouldn't be. I think it is. But I think the chief's point is, that he can't enforce, he doesn't have enough staff to enforce everything everywhere, I think was the point.
Are the signs going to say it's required on Rehoboth Avenue, or just the boardwalk?
Currently, the signs that have been ordered and that's been made in-house have mandatory boardwalk and highly suggested as far as on the beach, encouraged. So it does not say Rehoboth Avenue.
But the governor's edict is in public places where there are other people, where social distancing is difficult. And so I think, the recommendations, and it'll be helpful with the businesses, is if, as Commissioner Coluzzi mentioned, and I've seen that in a number of businesses, it's very easy to put up a sign saying, hey, no mask, no entrance. And it's just like putting up a sign at business saying, no t-shirt, no entrance, something like that. So I would think we need to work with the businesses as well. And the police will be, doing their job as best they can. But, and signage will go up across the board. We're getting some signs, hopefully this weekend, from the state that are consistent throughout the state and all the local communities. And this type of signage will also have those suggestions on there.
Well, shouldn't the
Commissioner
signage,
Kaluza.
I'm sorry, shouldn't the signage then say it's required on Rehoboth? I mean, I'm a little confused, and I think this
The
discussion.
the governor said it's required in public space. That's everywhere. Rehoboth Avenue, there's no signage that says anything about Rehoboth Avenue. That 6 feet or social distancing is throughout. And so if people are walking on the sidewalk down Bayard or 2nd Street or whatever, it's all the same. It is suggested that you wear them. The governor has said, practice social distancing, and do the best you can.
So the governor required masks in public spaces. I'm bringing this up for a reason that Commissioner Shanowski will get into about the need for better communication, because the businesses are confused like heck. So if the governor said it's required in public spaces, shouldn't our signs say it's required in public spaces? I'm just a little confused because we've gone back and forth between it's suggested, it's required. I'm just confused as to what the rule is right
It
now.
says it's required where social distancing is not capable.
Yes.
So I
Shouldn't our
guess
signs say it's required? I don't know.
Where there's a crowd on the sidewalk, you're supposed to have a mask because social distancing is difficult. And that's what the governor passed down. As much as possible, you can have it, but everybody's got a different point of view of what 6 feet is or what social distancing is. And that's why it's, as much as possible, we have to hope that people will do it. And I think with time, people will do it, the more people they see. But it has been confusing because a lot of people are coming from other parts of the state where nobody's wearing it. And so why should I wear it here? And it's a very subjective thing to push on people.
So can I've had my hand up. May I speak?
Yeah.
Please do.
Okay. So number one, again, if we do a letter to the businesses about the testing to make sure they know that their employees can get tested through a drive-in testing, and if we tell them we can't make them put signs up in their stores, but saying masks are required, but I would think that they would want to. And what will happen is when people walking on the avenue can't go in any place because they don't have a mask, well, that's going to help, I would think. Mm-hmm. The other thing about, as far as the social, one of the things I think we should perhaps use our signboard for is to say, you must wear a mask in public spaces, where whatever the governor's words were, which I believe is you must wear a mask in social or in public places where social distancing is not possible. So if we put that on our signboard, if we write a letter to the businesses telling them all to put a sign in their window, no mask, no entry, or however they want to phrase it, and also to remind them that all their employees should probably go through this drive-through testing. So that's kind of my little solution in a nutshell.
Commissioner
Thank you. Commissioner Gay, you have your hand up?
Yeah, well, first of all, Pat, I completely agree with you about using the electronic sign. I was going to ask that question too, and obviously that's a big one that people see. My understanding is that there's some signage that we're getting as well as signage coming from the state. And I would certainly like to think that would help, that part of the problems that maybe we experienced last weekend was just people not knowing what the rules are, and the rules being a little ambiguous then, but now it's certainly more straightforward as regards a boardwalk. But, in terms of the business signage, doesn't the state, they may be ones you can print out yourself, but don't they have materials already that they've created, small signage that the businesses could use without having to create their own? I think they may. And that's one question. And the other thing is, in any material that goes out, this is one of the things that the hotel businesses ought to be aware of, and the realtors ought to be aware of, that any communication they send out, people don't come to the city to get the, you know, the word on what's going on in Rehoboth this week. So they may not think to look on our site for some of this guidance. So it seems like any information going out to visitors once, you know, they're allowed in, should include this on everything.
Thank you, Commissioner Gay. If you can hold on, we've got a couple people on of the citizens of the town that signed up, and actually one of them has his hand up. If you all don't mind, I'm sure it's on this subject. Rather than go off track on here, try to stay on it. If that's okay, Rick Perry, if you can open.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Just a quick comment on this topic. I think that it's important for the city to make clear that masks are required on Rehoboth Avenue and also I would suggest on Wilmington and Baltimore, because those are even less amenable to social distancing. And by the city taking that action, excuse me, I think you will be helping the businesses tremendously because to the extent you require masks on those sidewalks, you know, it is less likely that people are going to try to enter businesses without them. And so that helps everybody, I think. And it, you know, I understand it's a difficult thing to enforce, but at least saying it's required might make people think more than once about not wearing a mask. Secondly, and I don't know, I think I made this suggestion once before. If either the city or Rehoboth Beach Main Street, perhaps, could come up with some kind of uniform signage that businesses can use with respect to do not enter without a mask, et cetera. If they all look the same, it's a constant uniform reminder to people as to what is expected of them in order to go into our businesses and restaurants. And so anything I think that can be done to make that a uniform message to people would be helpful. That's all I have.
Thank you, Rick. And just to know, I mentioned it a little bit before, we are getting signage as of this weekend, Friday, I believe, from the state that has a lot of pictures, if you will, and language about wearing masks and social distancing. We have also spoken with Main Street. They have designed some signage for the local businesses and possibly display in various parts of the city that they are putting together. They had a draft of it. The state's signs will be available to us on Friday, and we hope to get more. And they will, many of those will be handed out to the businesses so that they can put those in their windows. And I'm sure the Main Street signage will also be available to the businesses that they can put in their windows. Commissioner Schlosser.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just one thing, real quick. Yes, the Main Street signs look beautiful, and it's. I just want to give a shout out to the citizen or the community member that actually made the recommendation regarding a campaign around Respect Rehoboth, and Main Street took that and did a super job. So those signs will be out. And Edward, I'll defer to you as to when and how you want to share that with the commissioners, but wanted to mention that. And the second thing, you know, I just hope that whatever we put as, I'm going to kind of underscore what Commissioner Caluzzi and Commissioner Gay kind of mentioned, that we're consistent in all the signage, like the electronic boards. So, I mean, it's so, I hope it doesn't just say, you know, masks required on boardwalk and recommended on beach. It seems it should be the broader required in public spaces on the boardwalk and recommended on the beach. So it's consistent across the board. Is just what I hope the signs are going to do that the chief mentioned. So thank you. Oops.
Commissioner Szymanski, I'll turn it back to you. Wait a minute. Chief Banks would like to say something. Hold on one second.
Yeah, we have two signboards, and we'll utilize those as long as Public Works isn't needing them for any road closures. However, you can only put so much wording on the signboards, because what happens is it has to take so many seconds to go to page 1, page 2, and they recommend only do 2 pages.
Yeah.
Because a car going by is not going to read 3 pages worth because they're going by, and a normal person walking, the same thing. But you can't go real fast with it, or they don't comprehend it, so it has to go kind of at a certain pace. And that's recommended by DOT and transportation. So we will do that and try to put as much wording on it. I think I got the gist what you want, so we'll utilize the 2 in a parking spot on Hogarth Avenue or Baltimore or yeah.
Thank you,
Thank
Chief. Commissioner Szymanski.
Thank you. And I'll just end that topic with the Main Street signs, and the folks from Main Street and one of the citizens, Rachel Maka, that helped lead that, met with the city manager and communications director this week. And I think they'll have those available for businesses to put in their windows. I think the overall some businesses are confused, and I think businesses are having such a tough time and they want business. They don't want to be the bad guys with some of the messaging. So it's difficult for them. So I think if we have some universal signage that they're utilizing, that's helpful for them. The Main Street signage won't be as harsh as no mask, no entry. But again, if a specific business wants to do that, they're more than able to. On the next topic, before I go into the more broad concept of reopening with utilization of outdoor space, is something that I guess stems from this weekend and this week so far, is the confusion with businesses on what is curbside pickup, and how is that being enforced. So I think there's a lot of businesses that just don't understand whether they, what is entailed in curbside pickup, and are they allowed to have stuff on the sidewalk at this point with their door open, even if they have a table in front sort of blocking anyone from coming into the store.
Dennis Jenny is going to respond to that question.
Hi, good afternoon. So last Friday, Edward, remember seeing you out on the boardwalk. What we've done is we went around to all the retailers in town, trying to explain what the rules were, what curbside was, and what I did convey to them regarding some of the businesses that don't have a curbside, such as the place down there on the boardwalk. If you've got a table out in front where nobody comes in, they can come up and pick up their merchandise. So I'm hoping there's not much confusion right now. Later this week, I'll be going back to all the businesses, handing out flyers, what the requirements are going to be as well. When I was out, there was a lot of confusion, but I think we cleared that up. There was a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of misinterpreting of governor's rules. So I think we've got a handle on that.
Yeah. So Dennis, is it if I can just ask a question? Is it okay if merchant or retailers are showing a little bit of their merchandise outside of the store, and things of that nature?
No, it is not according to the current code. In fact, just before I came here, I responded to a complaint about a retailer who's got 2 big round racks of clothing out on the sidewalk. I wasn't here this weekend. He mentioned that everybody was doing it, but I explained to him that is not allowed. We have to make sure that we maintain a 5-foot clearance on the sidewalk, a minimum 5-foot clearance at all times. That's an American Disabilities Act requirement. And now with your social distancing requirements, we're looking at probably trying to keep at least a 7-foot clearance on that sidewalk. Obviously, on the smaller streets, you're not going to be able to put merchandise out. If there's some areas on Rehoboth Avenue, that's something you guys can talk about that might accommodate it. But right now, we don't allow merchandise out.
Dennis, when you say a 5 or 7 foot clearance, you're measuring that from what? So
Just at any spot on the sidewalk.
needs to be at least
Yeah,
5
right.
or 7 feet.
Typically, we measure from the building itself out.
Okay.
Commissioner Schlosser, you had a question, I believe?
Yes, I did follow on to Commissioner Schnowski's comment. And Dennis, I'm really happy to hear you're sending out the flyers. Maybe on that flyer, you could also, kind of make one communication to the businesses. Commissioner Caluzzi recommended putting about the testing, but I really hope you get those flyers out and address all the areas in the governor's orders in a very simple, kind of bulleted, clear way. Because even as of Sunday, when we talked to, I don't know, Edward, 20-some plus business owners on Rehoboth, Wilmington, and Baltimore, still a lot of confusion through no fault of yours. It's just confusing. So I'm really glad you're getting those flyers out, and I hope you get them to all the businesses to clarify things. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Back to you, Commissioner Schnowski.
Okay. The last thing, I think this would be great for Dennis and the city manager to put in those flyers, is I think the businesses are looking for guidance on what they're allowed to do to put on the sidewalk that would allow people to stand 6 feet apart, or for them to navigate a line in a certain direction. Not knowing the guidance that I think the city should be giving for that. My answer was, I think tape is probably the best thing, so it can be removed easily. But again, I think just providing some guidance on what type of material they should use, et cetera, I think would be very helpful for the businesses.
Commissioner Szymanowski, that guidance is in the governor's report. I know it's a long one, about 25 pages, but they do talk about taping up areas 6 feet apart. And I'm sure you all noticed this weekend, a number of the businesses did that, whether it was on the boardwalk or on Rehoboth Avenue. Obviously, these businesses need to check with their neighbors too, because if they're lining up every 6 feet, all of a sudden you're in your neighbor's property as well. But I think a number of the businesses did try that, and it seemed to be working. But again, every business is a little bit different. Back to you, please.
Yeah, sure. I think, we might just want to specify no paint or chalk or anything we don't want them to use. I think maybe just specify that. With that, I'll go into sort of the executive summary from what Main Street's been doing for the last couple of months, but more specifically the past few days. From our meeting last week, where we charged Main Street to talk to the businesses and get some more feedback on the utilization of sidewalks and parking spaces, and the outdoor spaces in general, to promote social distancing and some relief for the businesses to have shopping and dining outdoors. So in the past few days, we've conducted Zoom sessions and walking tours of Rehoboth Avenue and other streets closest to the beach to assess the feasibility of providing outdoor spaces for businesses, restaurants, and retail stores alike as they reopen. With indoor spaces, we know we'll have a 30% limitation of their fire code max capacity June 1, and the acknowledgement that no business is going to be able to withstand that limitation in their doing business, that we need to expand seating and retail spaces for the visitors out into open air spaces. And the point of today's meeting is to discuss and obtain consensus on recommendations and some of the thoughts on how to do that. Some of the general feedback received is that there needs to be clear communications about the rules during the recovery. There's been lots of ambiguity, and to the business owners, apologize for my tongue tied there. With that said, it was just a few days ago that the governor's reopening plans have come out, and that's one thing that we should certainly be making sure that all businesses have. It was clear that restrictions on second homeowners and short-term rentals are impacting the businesses tremendously. Many businesses believe that is their life blood there. People need seating on the sidewalks and boardwalk, and that was mostly discussions around the benches and safety concerns about people, sitting on curbs with people then coming in to park, and some near accidents we saw this past weekend. The mayor and city manager are already working on getting some of the benches back, and I saw them today doing that. So I think that's great, and that addresses the concerns that a lot of businesses have had. Again, restaurants and businesses cannot survive on a 30 or 50% indoor capacity. Retail cannot survive without allowing customers into their stores. Again, there's not much we can do about that other than advocating for them to the governor on their behalf. But it is good that as of tomorrow, they can at least allow appointments, and as of June 1, it'll be a 30% capacity. And that we're all in this together, and everyone needs to tighten their belts. So a few of the clear recommendations are that we provide a blanket approval to allow establishments to modify floor plans and expand service to include food and alcohol to on-premise or public property outdoor seating. If necessary, require a simple floor plan to be submitted, etc., and to be sure that they're complying with the state health orders. Now, just a little bit ago, we got a little bit more indication from the governor that a permit application will be forthcoming that would allow them to get the ability to do that after we get approval from the city. So I think the state has clearly sees a need for it. So now I think as a city, we just need to further to say, yes, we know you need to utilize the space, submit a plan to us, and we'll give the okay for you to send it to the ABC. And that covers sort of the second bullet here of sort of a blanket approval for the liquor license. I think they've already taken care of that since this was drafted. And also to allow businesses to utilize shared space or a neighboring property space. There's some businesses that don't have outdoor space or limited outdoor space that may have a neighbor that has, open space that closes at 5 o'clock, and they could, move their stuff over with allowance to use that space. So I think the two things is we would allow businesses to use any of their space that they have in any way, as long as they're adhering to the rules. ADA, 8-foot space between tables, etc. And we'd also, with the neighbor's approval, allow them to do that. With that said, I think those are things that everyone agrees on that I've talked to. There's a little less consensus on the utilization of city space on how to do that. So I'm going to talk about two options on that front. One, or more than two options, but you'll see the difference. When it comes to Rehoboth Avenue, there's an option A and an option B. One is to allow businesses to utilize parking spaces at an ad hoc scenario where they can choose to use that space, have some type of approval process with the city, and whether it's a retailer or restaurant, they can then use their they could utilize those parking spaces in front of their restaurant. The second option that a lot of people have asked for is to just not have the sidewalk side parking spaces all over Rehoboth Avenue, particularly the first and second blocks, where we would block that off to parking in general, and create a pedestrian walkway there, so there's more space for social distancing. And then it gives the businesses room for encroachment on the sidewalk, or keep the pedestrians on the sidewalk and allow all the businesses to use the parking spaces. So there's sort of option A and B for Rehoboth Avenue, or C. We don't do anything, but it's clear with everyone that I talk to, most people want to just block it off and have more pedestrian walkway on that sidewalk side of Rehoboth Avenue. If not, being able to just expand what they're capable of doing out into parking spaces. But I think that there's some other challenges with that, with ensuring ADA compliance with curbs, et cetera. But ultimately, I think it's the ABC board that will either approve or deny them, with them submitting floor plans utilizing that space. The second, the negative impact there is going to be to our budget and revenue. Although we may lose some revenue, and after I'm done, I'll ask Commissioner Schlosser to provide a little bit more insight into the budgetary impacts. She did a little analysis. But first, let me go back onto one other piece of this. That's just Rehoboth Avenue. Others are, the discussion also included allowing businesses to use some spaces on Baltimore and Wilmington, or make all of Baltimore and Wilmington pedestrian only, but to allow traffic for deliveries and people getting to their driveways, et cetera. And that would make those streets pedestrian. Again, that would also have, in part or full, again, that also would have some budgetary impacts. So with that, I'm going to ask Commissioner Schlosser to tee it up on the budget aspects, but that gives you a little bit of insight into what people are thinking and the suggestions that have been going around. I wish there was an easy answer. I wish none of them had budgetary impacts or revenue impacts. And I wish that there was consensus, but even amongst the business community, there's never going to be 100% consensus. So I'd leave it up for discussion just after I ask Commissioner Schlosser to fill in anything that I may have left out. She was very helpful in working with me these past few days. And like I said, she did the budget and revenue impact. So I'm going to ask her to speak to that.
Yeah, thanks, Edward. I think you did a super job of reflecting, and I think there was over 20 business owners from, across the commercial district. Is that right? Do you have a number? There was a lot of representation as we were doing
the two groups that you worked with. Yeah, it was about 24 to 25, but in total, with the other walking groups, there's probably about 45.
Okay.
And then additional ones that I've just communicated with, or Main Street communicated with, are in other ways.
So I would say a resounding theme, as you know, these are, these guys are part of our community, and I know you all know this, but they are hurting. They asked the city and the commissioners and the employees of the city to really work with them. As we're looking at these approvals and these forms and all this, please provide as much flexibility as you can, rapid turnaround of any kind of approvals that have to happen. And just a thing to underscore there, anywhere we can give kind of a blanket approval and not require them to do hours and hours of paperwork would be awesome. Be flexible with what they can and can't do. And then also, if we could possibly work with the other members of ACT to go into the OABCC, which is the Alcoholic Beverage Control Commissioner. And instead of 140 some restaurants or whatever the exact number is, going to and asking for a waiver to serve outside, they really asked if we could go as a community, as ACT, or at least as Rehoboth, and ask for some sort of blanket approval with some condition on expanding the liquor license outside to the outdoor seating, rather than they're already crunching right now, figuring out how to survive, let alone having to do more paperwork. So that was an ask. So on the other thing they asked is for all of us to remember, and I think again we know this, but if we're all in this together, everyone has to tighten their belts. So I'll get to that. With that being said, I'm going to go real quick to the financial analysis. I just thanks to Sharon's team, I just got a number, and it's in that memo that Edward sent out. Just a really quick analysis of kind of what might be the worst case scenario if we do agree to remove some of the parking spaces on first and second block, Rehoboth, Wilmington, and Baltimore. We just did a quick analysis of how many spaces are there times, an assumption of, again, the worst case or the best case is if all those spaces were filled. Each space could generate up to $36 a day. So you multiply that by the number of spaces times the number of streets and the max for an estimate of 60 days. So basically you're in the neighborhood, somewhere in the neighborhood of $790K loss in revenue. If we did go with one of these options of removing the parking spaces, and quite frankly, if we don't do that, I'll be a little less diplomatic than Edward, but if we don't allow them to use those parking spaces, it's not clear to me how most of our restaurants are going to survive without that space and without the outdoor seating. So that's kind of where we are. And I don't know, Edward, if you want to add anything else, but that's the back of the envelope kind of financial analysis. So please.
Let me, I'll just say the revenue impact is for 60 days. So just to clarify, that number is for 60 days. I don't think that we would suggest that we do that off the bat for 60 days. I think it's a much shorter period of time. And it's, again, something that we would have to evaluate on a week-by-week basis with our number, with our meetings. But it it's been a very emotional couple days because in walking around and talking to all of these businesses, there are many of them that are about to lose everything. And it's very emotional and hard to listen to it and to think about it. But it's the reality. It is the reality. So we have to do something to help utilize, some of the outdoor spaces. With that, I guess we'll just open it up to discussion.
Great, Edward. Thank you, Edward. Thank you, Lisa. A couple questions I have, and then obviously we open it up. How many specific businesses have asked for this so far?
For either option, whether it's
to have space outside of their business. on
I-
public space.
I think all of them that we met with, Edward, correct, would like to expand to outdoor space.
Yeah.
And that's 40?
Restaurants,
No.
sure.
The number 45-ish were just what people that were part of our walking around sessions. The feedback is it's much larger than that in general. If you can just hold on a second.
Well, you can show that. I'll speak on. Obviously, as we mentioned, the application will be available on Friday. Unfortunately, we don't have the opportunity through the state, through the ABC, to do a blanket, and I don't see them doing that either. As you can see, once the application goes out, in the governor's order, it's basically any restaurant, for example, that has alcohol outside needs to have a drawing specific to that restaurant about where they're going to put barriers. And so I think once we get the application out there, once we start to have the businesses fill out those applications, the city will work to get it done as quickly as possible. But then we'll have a much better idea of exactly what we need. And, you know, I know you had talked about the first couple blocks on Rehoboth Avenue or Wilmington or Baltimore, but we have restaurants going all the way back to the bridge. I think what's going to have to happen is these applications are going to have to go out to every business on the street. And I've talked to a few restaurants as well as a few businesses as well. And some of them think that this would be way out there. I agree. For some, it's probably good. For others, who knows? But it's going to have to be based on the businesses. We've got, I don't know how many businesses, Carol Everhart will be able to tell us when she gets on later today, how many businesses that we have in town. But I would think every business would like to be in on this. And I think every business that doesn't want it needs to be in on this as well, because there will be people, you know, I remember there was a business on Rehoboth Avenue that was blowing bubbles, whereas the business next door didn't like the bubbles. You know, basically, I've already heard from a number of the businesses up on the horseshoe by the bandstand. They were so upset we closed that during the time that we closed the boardwalk, because they wanted their customers to be able to drive around and see that they were open and park right out front. Because a lot of people I've heard from, you know, if we're going to give a restaurant 2 parking spaces, say, if that's enough for them, should we give 2 spaces to the business right next door and not use the meters, and so that they, just for their business, that they can park there? So we really, I think, need to get down to the nitty gritty now that there's an application available and the state's willing to work with the city, and I think the city is willing to work with the businesses to figure out exactly how many it takes. Because if we, for example, in the option A or B, if we were to close off, say, the second block of Baltimore as an example, to walking, that's a very nice idea. We take off the parking. We're going to have traffic in there because of deliveries, because people live there, and because of access from one block to the other. And so we close it off to walking. Well, that means anybody on that second block, any restaurant on that second block, is not going to be able to have tables outside. If we put tables in some places on Rehoboth Avenue, and somebody doesn't want it, I mean, how much walking are we going to have on Rehoboth Avenue outside the sidewalk? So I think this is great. I think you've got some great information here that gives us ideas. I think we just need to take it to the next level, and I think that's what this meeting's about, because June 1st is 10 days away. So I think there's time to focus on that, but I think now you've put together this executive summary, and I think this is good. Now we need to get to the numbers, if you will. And now we need to figure out that each business is going to have to put in an application with a drawing, with how much space they need, and business by business. I think we're going to have to go up and down Rehoboth Avenue, up and down Wilmington and Baltimore for those 2 blocks. And so I think it's an awful lot of businesses, even more than 45 or 55 or whatever. But I'd like to hear from everybody. And I know that's a lot to say, And I'll open it up. I know Commissioner Schlosser's got her hand up.
Just really quick, Mayor. I know you'd like to end this quick sooner rather than later, but I think
No. We got some time.
Okay, good. I just didn't know if you were kind of rushing to get to, because I really hope that the commissioners can come to some at least general consensus that we want to at least explore removing the parking spaces as one of the options. And also on the ABC, I'm not sure, unless you've already been told absolutely no, we can't go in for some sort of blanket approval or delegate that authority right now or something different. We can't rely on old processes when we're in such a new world. So to just say, my goodness, we can't go to ABC and ask for some sort of blanket thing. How in the world are they going to process all the applications by June 1st for every single business out there? Why not delegate that?
So, Commissioner,
If I can say something on the ABC, because they say it specifically in the governor's order, that they need specifics on boundaries. And so with an alcoholic beverage license, you need specifics, how many tables you have, how many seating you have, where it's going to be. And so it's not the ABC saying, okay, Rehoboth, you've got 100 businesses, you're fine with all of them, because every single one is different. And that's why it'll be important to get the application in. I don't think it's going to be that difficult once they have the drawings in, and they're going to use the city's point of view. And if the city goes to ABC and says, geez, this drawing works, everything's good, we suggest you move this on quickly, that's great. But we can't go in and say, hey, we've got 100, just give us the blanket for these 100.
Can I say something in relation to this? Because I will give you some information that you may not know.
Yes, please.
So, there's such a thing as called a gathering permit. And a gathering permit is only for nonprofit organizations when they are having an event that includes alcohol. It's a one-pager that you fill out for the ABC, and you do have to attach to it, your seating. And you just, I've done this several times for several different, organizations. And you just draw tables, you say where the boundaries are, you say where the liquor is stored, that kind of thing. So I think they're used to dealing with, now these are kind of one-off, of course, and they're usually like a weekend thing or something like that. But they're used to dealing with these kinds of things. So I'm hoping that the permit for this will be very similar to the gathering permit. So, I think we need to have, as we move forward, as we see what they want, I'm hopeful that it can be something like that. And it may not be something, really major.
Oh, no, I agree with you 100%. I don't think it will be, because of the fact that the governor's probably getting people like people in Rehoboth, probably Bethany, probably Wilmington, with these exact things, because they're losing money because they're not able to get the seating inside, so they'd like to get it outside. I know how that feels because I'm involved in the restaurant community. So I think it'll be a pretty simple process, but it's not, it can't be Rehoboth grants it for 100 people. It's got to be 100 applications with drawings, quick drawings.
I think that's true, but they turn them around, at least for the gathering permit. They turn them around same day so.
I don't know if they'll do it that quickly with all these people applying.
The point being, it's generally not.
It's quick. It is a quick process. It's just that everybody will be applying simultaneously.
Right.
And if we've got 100 businesses, there's going to be other ones too.
Yeah.
So, if I may, related to the parking, the parking spaces. So we're talking about restaurants opening up June 1. One of the things that I've been talking about, especially for this weekend, Memorial Day weekend, is this could be, sort of a test. We're opening up, for example, let's say, well, for me, it's always been Baltimore and Wilmington. Take away the parking spaces in the first 2 blocks, let people walk there and not close to vehicles, but give an opportunity to see how that works with people walking and so forth. So I mean, I know that we're talking about using this for the purpose of restaurants, but I think if we could move forward and do this for a test of how it will work for people walking in these areas this weekend, I think it's worth doing.
That's an idea. What are you using for barriers?
Well, I'd ask the chief that. I pass that on.
I mean, remember what everybody said a week or so ago about barriers on the boardwalk, and no one wanted anything like a barrier. We'd have to have, for traffic purposes, safety purposes, something on Wilmington Avenue for at least Baltimore for that block. That's a lot of barrier, and I don't know that we have enough right on board now.
Well, I don't know if I'd let the chief weigh in on this, but do we actually really have to have barriers? I mean,
Yes.
we have a couple of barriers and tape, caution tape or something, because we need to have no parking there. But at the same time, people are going to walk in the street anyway. So,
Well, yes, and we do this very successfully every summer for the annual camp, whatever it's called.
Block party.
Block party.
Block party. I mean, the street is closed off. That works very well. And our police department has handled it very successfully.
But that's when the street is closed off. Remember, once we hit the summertime, we've got more deliveries. We've got people that live on that street. As the summer progresses, well, at least this weekend, I'm sure there's people that want to use that street. So that's something to give consideration to as well. And I'll put the chief on. He's got some things to say, please.
Yeah.
Yes, I guess I want to clarify which streets are and what blocks are you talking about, so each one will be different.
well, I think everybody's got a different idea. My thoughts were, as a starter, Baltimore and Wilmington, first 2 blocks.
Then to shut it down across the street, either have to use Jersey barriers, the concrete, which we don't have, or the barricades that have a C-Witch that we use that was rented. The city does not own any of those barricades about waist high, so they have to be rented to put across the street. Mind you, anytime you put any type of barrier like that, if you notice when we have the block parties, we have a police officer or somebody at each end, because emergency vehicle, fire truck, ambulance, whatever might have to go down the street for any type of emergency. So there has to be a person has to be at each end when you go ahead and do that. So it can be done. We have to get some things ordered and rented, but that would be the quickest and easiest way, but it does take personnel. Remind yourselves, you do that, take the personnel off the street, speak for the police department. That's the officers that's not on the boardwalk enforcing, wearing face masks and things like that. When I take off this boardwalk, intersections, I don't want to get personnel up there. So it's the priority, I guess, is why.
Well, I guess where we are then, and this is, and I'm just talking about for the purpose of walking, forget about the idea of the restaurants. It sounds like we're not going to be able to really help them then if we can't do this. If we can't close some of these areas and allow for some sort of sidewalk dining, I don't know what we're going to do.
Well, let me just add in, I know, just to give you some more information just before everybody else weighs in, some of and as you're giving your comment on this too, I agree with Pat. I think we're throwing up barriers, like on, not figuratively throwing up barriers, when we can work the tactics. I mean, I think there's ways of putting up a barrier that maybe we just haven't thought through, but if we talk to operational folks, maybe we can figure something out. So I don't think we should discount it because there's no barrier that we own right now, number one. And that's what the restaurants and others ask. Please help us figure out something. Number two is, as you guys are discussing this, there's 2 distinctions. One is they asked for some, like, and I said the blanket approval for the outdoor seating on the parking space, but also there's a lot of establishments that have on-premise space that aren't right now permitted to allow for outdoor seating, but that's the authority of the city. And so they'd really like to just have, like, be allowed to put tables out, and perhaps on Rehoboth Avenue be able to put tables in the, I guess they're maybe bump outs, in the spaces, how the sidewalk kind of curves, like in those bump outs. So I just wanted to add that feedback as you guys are giving comments on the ideas. Thank you.
If I could, I'm sorry, I just, again, wasn't saying we couldn't do it, we can get the product, we can block it off, that was the original question. I'm just saying, I just wanted to bring up, we needed somebody to demand that, because it's just traffic cones, people move cones all the time, and if it's something more substantial that we can rent, it's just, again, we have to be able to make sure somebody's there to move it for any emergency operations that goes on.
Thanks, Chief.
Commissioner Gay, you had your hand up, please.
Yeah, first of all, I've learned this today, and just listening to all this discussion, I gather there is a big difference between closing off the street for a one-day event like the Camp Rehoboth event versus closing it off for 2 months. I mean, there's a lot of logistical issues and deliveries and, access and all that. So that is a challenge. So I certainly don't have a problem with someone using their own premise space. Obviously there's some businesses that have that option, and I don't see why they shouldn't be able to do that. But otherwise, yeah, it seems like we've got some real logistical challenges, with the whole streets concept. I'll be interested to see how that, what possibilities there are. But I also have a budget question, and that is, the budget was based on 60 days of losing that parking revenue. And Mr. Schnauzer, you mentioned you would hope that would be even a shorter period of time, but 60 days isn't even the whole summer. So what's anticipated? Is anticipated that this wouldn't start till later, till maybe renters are back or something, and then they go, or would only be 60 days and then it would be shut off? Because potentially, if we really did this soon, or any portion of it soon, you're looking at a lot more than 60 days of impact. So I'm just curious.
I did it, so I'll tell you, Susan, my thinking, and then Edward, please weigh in. Just my thinking was, no, you'd start this like in June. Like these guys don't have time. If they don't recoup the revenue right. I just want to underscore, we're not going to have half our restaurants, maybe more, if we don't do something here and move forward. So I did it for June and July. With the assumption that, and it's an assumption because we don't have the data or science, I'm sure folks will say that perhaps things will start to get better and loosen up in August. So for right now, that was my reasoning, but certainly, Edward, go ahead and jump in. I just wanted to say why I did it that way, that would cover June, July, and then would reassess maybe mid-July where we are and see what we needed to do.
So the idea would be to reassess the guideline. In other words, that maybe they wouldn't be necessary after like July.
Exactly, Susan.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. That was just my starting point. So good question, though.
Yeah.
Let me, if Dick has Commissioner Byrne has had his hand up, if we can just hear from him, and then I will loop all of this back together.
That'd be great. Go ahead, Commissioner Byrne.
Sure, and thank you, commissioners, for the work that you've done this last weekend. I think it's critical, and I'm certainly supportive of the fact that we need to do something to support both our restaurants and our retail establishments so that they can make it financially. They will not make it on 30%. Or likely even on 50%. That's the reality. And I think that's the reality that we have to use to be innovative, to be creative, to think outside the box and figure out how we can do some things to support them and to try out some of these things. And with the knowledge that that whatever we achieve consensus on and go forward, that we're probably going to be tweaking it as the season goes on. A couple of other thoughts. I appreciate the 60-day scenario so that we would have some sense of revenue loss from parking. I think the reality is that we should be thinking the season for what we try to do in support of the businesses. I think that's the reality of COVID-19. And then that brings me to, I think, another very compelling reason that we need to be able to figure out how to support the businesses in getting out the door and outside to do these things. And it's not only from a financial point of view, but the science regarding the spread of the virus is absolutely clear that it spreads quickly in small indoor environments where people are in there, like in a restaurant, for an hour plus. You get folks outside and it really helps. There's a lot of research. I passed one paper around that had been sent to us a couple of weeks ago. You can dig around and find all kinds of scientific research that says that outside we're not going to be spreading the virus, assuming we're also doing the social distancing, using sanitizers, et cetera, et cetera. So the science is clear. So that's a compelling reason, in addition to just supporting the businesses, to be able to increase their business beyond the 30% inside.
Thanks.
Well, could I just,
Edward, go ahead, Stephen. Edward.
yeah, I just want to say one thing. One of the things that we talked about the last time we met was when, assuming that we're able to come up with a creative approach to reducing parking in the core park or certain sections of the commercial areas, is there a consensus that the other meters should be turned on, after the 29th of May? I think that's important that we get to that.
Yeah.
Based on the comments that the city manager made during our last meeting.
If I can jump in, Edward, I agree with you, Commissioner Sheffer. That was one of the things I was going to ask for before we adjourn this meeting, and I'm not saying we're going to adjourn it anytime soon. Although I don't want to go much past where we are now because the staff time. My feeling is these are some very good ideas, and I think we have these opportunities to implement some of these ideas. I think, unfortunately, though, we have to make a couple decisions. Number one is the parking meters were suspended until the 29th. My feeling is we don't have a specific plan in place today. My feeling would be to go ahead and remove those restrictions on the parking meters and the permits as of the 29th so we can move forward. And so people get used to the fact that permits are required, parking meters are required, while working with the businesses on their applications so that we can find out exactly how many businesses want what. And so then we'll be able to decide, because I really think it's going to be disjointed. And if we open up all the streets on Baltimore and Wilmington and not Rehoboth or vice versa, somebody's going to be missed. And I think we're going to have to go around the business community and stick an application in every door, let us know who wants to make a move, and try to get those things going between now and, I don't know, it's June 15th, or maybe it's June 1st, because at June 1st, it is going to go to 30% on the businesses. It is going to go to 30% on the restaurants. Now, based on what the governor has said, 14 days later, he's going to think about the next phase. So phase 2 is probably going to be sometime around June 15th. I see from a phase 2 perspective, probably an additional 30% in the restaurants. Phase 3, based on his logic, is unless there's a breakout, is probably July 1st. July 1st is going to be pretty close I guess with social distancing to that 75 to 100%. So, the restaurants are going to be able to get back to where they were sooner than August 1st. And, my feeling is we have to look at the budget because, for example, this weekend, depending on the weather, we're probably giving up about $200,000 in meters and probably, I don't know, $50,000 or somewhere in thereabouts in permits. And so I think that's something we have to look at. And we can always move forward with a business taking a couple of the spaces, if that's what we agree, and turn the meters off for that or put up signs. The same thing is if we want to open up Wilmington and Baltimore for just walking and cut out the businesses, we can do that at some point in time. But I think we have to start with, I know what the goal is to help the businesses, and I'm 100% behind that. However, we don't know what's there. We're just assuming everybody wants it. I think you're going to find that not everybody wants it. And so it'll be very important because then we can take 3 spaces for 2 businesses and they can put together a plan, and that's that. And then the next couple businesses may not want something like that, because if you look up and down Rehoboth Avenue, some of these restaurants have 3 or 4 retail shops in between. I think the retail shops want people to come in, and hopefully by July 1st, they're going to be able to. If I don't know how many retail shops are going to want to put racks out in a parking space, they'd like to have it right next to their building on the sidewalk. We can't do that. That makes for ADA and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of unknowns here, and I think the more knowns we can put on paper, and that's going to be the businesses, the easier it's going to be for us to move forward in a productive manner. But I think we need to start the meters on the 29th, and then we can always turn them off in certain spaces. But I think people need to know that we're moving forward, we're looking to work with the businesses as much as possible, but we need their input, their specific input of how much space do they need? Do they need a liquor license outside? Do they already have one? How many tables are they going to plant? What type of barriers are they going to put up for their specific space? And there's Commissioner Krasnowski. Sorry, you see you're up there. Turn it back to you, sir.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, everyone, for the comments so far. So let me just clarify a couple of things, and then I'll specifically answer some of the questions. So, Mayor, I going back, the 40 to 50 people were individual. That number, they were individuals that we specifically met with this weekend. A lot of other feedback and communications were had through other processes. And even some of those people own 3-4 businesses. So in a quick calculation, I think we've got feedback from about 160, 75 businesses so far.
That's great.
So just, I don't want everyone to think that it's just a small limited number of people. With that, there's a lot of different opinions. So a lot of the retailers are less inclined to use that outdoor space than the restaurants. That's clear. A lot of the retailers that said that they would not utilize the space because they don't want to hire another staff person to watch the space, said that they wouldn't do it, but they're perfectly fine with, blocking off spaces for that purpose and allowing others to do it. Now, when you get closer to, when you talk about the horseshoe, that's a whole different animal, and those businesses feel like they get shunned by the city all the time with closing that off. That closing that in any way, any manner, they're very much against. Now, I think I did get some compromise there in that, there is the ability to allow traffic to go around that. And similar to what happened this past weekend, the chief had cones up, I think about, in the middle of those parking spots on the right-hand side or the sidewalk side, so that you could have, 10, 15-minute pickup spots on the right-hand side, but while opening it up so businesses could utilize space and more people could walk. And there's a lot of bump outs in that area where there's more space for the businesses to utilize anyway. So you're right, there's not, every business has different needs, and there isn't consensus, 100% consensus, but I will say that with closing the either having the sidewalk side parking spots completely, no parking there completely, as to create a pedestrian walkway, or having some of the spaces blocked off ad hoc for the businesses that want to do it. Both of those are heavily supported. Not 100%, but very much supported. And Commissioner Schlosser, you talked about process with the ABC, and I just want to clarify that a lot of the discussions that happened over the weekend and the past few days, where we were asking for the city to come out and ask for blanket guidance or support, that was before some of the guidance came out today in the governor's decision. And I agree with the mayor. It will be, while they want the city's okay on a site plan of where tables are going to be, my understanding is this new application that they have that's coming out, they intend to have it be a speedy process. And this was them changing their normal process to make changes to listen to the needs of the businesses in the state. In terms of the revenue analysis, and I hate the way it's phrased, and I maybe should have thought about it, phrasing it differently, but the total revenue loss, which Commissioner Schlosser with the city staff help, had the 60 days at 794. That truly is a potential loss of revenue. It doesn't mean it is a loss of revenue. One would hope that those people are coming into town anyway, and if they're not parking in those spots, they're going to be parking in other spots. And if they're not in metered spots, then they're getting a day pass. So I think we need to realize that doesn't, although it says revenue loss, it doesn't mean it actually is loss. That those people will be parking someplace else. And to Commissioner Gay's point, I said, we may not do it or want to guarantee we're going to do it for 60 days. That by no means is what I think we need to do or how long it should last. I just wouldn't commit to doing it at 60 days from the get-go. I think we need to take it in small incremental steps and say, do it, try it out, see that it's actually working before we commit to a long period of time. And you're right, it may need to be the whole season, I don't know. Mm-hmm. So my comment on the 60 days was I wouldn't want to commit to that at first. I'd like to take a more slow measured approach to it. That was my point on the 60 days. So I think, and I agree with Commissioner Sheffer and the mayor, we probably should start parking on the 29th. I was disappointed that the governor did not lift some of this stuff sooner. I was hoping that June things would ease up before June 1, but obviously with his news today, it's not likely that that's going to happen. So we would be looking at a June 1 implementation date. And to Commissioner Gay's point, I'll just give my thought. I could go I honestly could go either way on a lot of this. I just know that we need to do something. My hesitation with Baltimore and Wilmington being the sort of the test zone, or really having them be completely closed for parking, is that the businesses on those streets are so sporadic that you could have, let's just take the first block of Wilmington or the first block of Baltimore. You've got, 2 restaurants and a retail shop on the very beginning of the street on the left side. Then you've got a restaurant, a theater, and another restaurant, and that's it for the whole street. So in closing it so that businesses could encroach out and there's more people to walk around, they're not heavily walked streets anyway. So that's where I'm kind of looking at it, and I'm not sure if it's really going to be that helpful or not.
Well, the whole point is for social distancing, because you can't social distance on the sidewalk. You can't pass somebody.
No, and I completely understand that too. So I guess in thinking, in hoping that the solution would help both social distancing and the businesses, right? And there's so many hotels and residential areas on those streets that there's going to be a lot of traffic too. So I struggle with that a little bit. At least the blocks closest to the boardwalk on Rehoboth Avenue seems a little bit more clear in that the usage, the need, because that's where the foot traffic is. The first 2 blocks of Rehoboth Avenue, that's where all the foot traffic is in town. And there's not enough room for that. And with that and social distancing, there definitely is enough space for restaurants and retailers to encroach on the sidewalk. So, and in the beginning of this, I was very much inclined just to go with, businesses, raising their hand and saying, hey, yeah, I want to use all the parking spots in front of my business. I'm going to submit an application. We can even charge them a few bucks per day or, per spot, something like that. And I think there's a willingness to pay it if they're going to utilize the space. But the more I think about it, I think for many reasons, I'm leaning towards just on Rehoboth Avenue, just making that entirely pedestrian on their sidewalk sides, or on the sidewalk side of the avenue, meaning that there would still be parking on the in the median. Sorry, that was a lot. I hope I answered everyone's question.
Can I just clarify that? So you're saying allow the pedestrian traffic on the sidewalk, let them use the parking spaces for tables, and then have parking in the median? Is that what you're saying? I just wanted to clarify you are right now.
Just that we would, that parking in the median spots would remain, that we would only be closing the sidewalk side for either pedestrians to walk or the utilization of from the retailers and the businesses. It doesn't matter, I don't think, whether we have the businesses use the sidewalk and the people walk on the parking spaces or vice versa. I think that decision needs to be whatever is safest for the pedestrians. And I would, if that's the route we're going to go, I would ask the city manager and the chief to weigh in on which it is. But I think that's a decision that comes after. Do we stop parking in those spots? Yes or no? And then we think about, from the operations of it, where is it best to have businesses utilizing it and where is it best to have people walking? Those are just my thoughts. And I think I've answered all of the questions and I've given my feedback, I think, on everything.
Commissioner Schlosser, your hand is up.
Thanks, Mayor. Mary, I know you've mentioned a couple times, again, I mentioned it earlier about kind of closing this meeting up, but I think this is too important to try to to get to some conclusion without some action items here and discussion and allowance for the public as well. So I'm just putting that in. Secondly, I kind of like, we did hear from the businesses, and I kind of like the idea of, kind of having the businesses put in the application to tell us exactly what they need and want. But I just would ask that as we go through that process, once we get the application, that you allow the businesses to, or, as part of the guidance in filling out the application, for them to outline how they would use and how many parking spaces they would want to use as an option. So have them submit the form, assuming they can use some parking spaces and maybe assuming they can't, just so we can get a good assessment of the overall thing. And this is very tactical, but some of the feedback that I got is just making sure that, and Sharon, I'm sure you're thinking this through, but kind of being a little flexible in the form, like allowing hand-drawn schematics, that sort of thing. But also, before we leave today, I'd really like to hear from the city manager or whoever, whatever's appropriate, as to what we can do now to give some relief. And then I know we have to wait for the applications and such on Friday to get to the bigger decisions about parking. But I'd really like to have that before we vote on parking revenue. I mean, parking revenue is going to be nothing for us if, the majority of our businesses go out. So it seems we have to solve that and come to some actions and some relief now. And today, it's almost more important than parking revenue, in my opinion, to help out these businesses, and what we can do now between now and Tuesday, what we can do next Tuesday after we get the applications, et cetera.
Mayor, can I clarify a couple things before you go to the other commissioners? Sorry, I think it may help the conversation.
Yes.
So Commissioner Schlosser, one, I hope that out of this meeting, we can come to a consensus on allowing businesses to utilize any outdoor space that's on their property or an adjacent neighbor that they're allowed to use. I think there's consensus on that, that we allow that so they can go forward in submitting, plans. And I completely forgot my clarification. We do need to come to a decision before those applications can go before the city and then the ABC, because if we're going to allow businesses to utilize city property, that needs to be a part of the application. So we have to come to some decision so it allows the businesses to modify their plans so they can first submit it to us for approval and then submit it to ABC for their approval. So
I get that.
To clarify that.
Yep, I get that. Again, the application that's going to come is from the state. We're going to get that on Friday. On Friday, we can distribute that through Main Street, through the chamber, to the businesses. But we have to have a plan from each of these businesses. And if somebody needs 2 spaces or 3 spaces, they put that on their plan. That's going to be part of the plan. But I think we need to know before we move forward with anything is how many people are asking for this so that we can, is it worthwhile or is it not? And if 12% of the businesses want it and the rest don't, who knows? The numbers you're showing me, there's probably going to be more than that. But in the past, when we've had this type of situations, especially on Rehoboth Avenue, it's been very few would even like to think about something like this. And with that in mind, what I'd like to be able to do, I know Carol Everhart's on the call. She's one of the call-in people. If the 2 commissioners, Sheffer and Byrne, wouldn't mind, I'll put you on hold and ask Carol to come on. If Max can mute her, unmute her. Carol Everhart, are you there?
I am here, Paul. Thank you very much, commissioners. I just have a few comments on listening to you today. First off, I applaud the efforts that you're making to look at the needs of the business community and the residents and the visitor. We all wear three hats. Nobody wears one hat. We're all wearing three of them: visitor, resident, and the business community. As you were talking, especially about the need of what you can do downtown, you're really trying to retrofit. It's not like we have a blank canvas here and we can lay out what we want. You're retrofitting, and that's the most difficult way to do something. So anything the chamber can do to get the information out there, we're going to do that. I did want to say, very important in that retrofitting, they were very clear with me this morning, ADA compliant. ADA compliant. It's critical for the city and for the business and the customer. The other thing was you mentioned along the way, the short-term rental, and I want to just touch on this. I thought the letter was great because we are also getting high numbers of calls from your property owners. They don't know whether they can come in and ready their place. They're very confused. One today, when she left, the heat was on. She just wants to come in and turn her heat off. She's scared to come in and turn her heat off. So it's, I thought addressing that it's going to be helpful to everybody that's addressed. And then there were two other things. The signs. So tomorrow morning, I am on the line with Liz Kelly, who is your state tourism director. They are creating signage. I think it's going to be used in all the beach communities. So I think she has, whether it's or Lewis or Rehoboth, Dewey, this signage will be created in a way that it can be used everywhere. If it simply says mask required, that's what it'll be. They're going to keep it simply.
Good.
Keep some kind of symbolism. I've not seen that. I'm supposed to get that this evening. Your comments really helped me knowing that you would like to see that mask definitely enforced as much as they can say that. And lastly, the testing. Absolutely anything that we can do to, make sure that the businesses have the testing information that they need, who to talk to, that type of thing. We're more than willing to do that type of thing. And somebody did ask a question, how many businesses downtown? I haven't counted this year, but you had 332 business fronts last summer. Now, those are business fronts. That's everybody. That's the lawyer, and that's the restaurant, and that's the retail. That's everybody. So all of that being said, based on what I heard you say, unless you have questions for me, I'm here to help.
Thank you so much, Carol. Appreciate your time. Don't go anywhere. Somebody may have a question. I'm going to go right to Commissioner Sheffer.
Yeah, a couple things. In response to Commissioner Shinuski, I agree and support those restaurants that have space like Megan Key had asked for. I think we could probably do something a little bit quicker for them. And then logistically, just a couple things to throw out. Most of us, if not all of us, have been to metropolitan cities where there's outdoor eating. It's almost always 100% adjacent to the entrance of the building. Part of that is because of allowing a buffer between where people are eating and where traffic is. And so I think we have to we'll get better information from the city manager and Chief Banks. But I do believe that there's, I know personally, I wouldn't want to be sitting in a spot with a little bit of a barrier and then a car's driving right next to me. There's going to be fumes. So I think that that's something that should be considered. And I also love the idea of having those folks who want to be a little creative and look for ways to expand their footprint, at least in the short term, to work with their neighbors, neighboring businesses, as they're putting together their plans so that we have more of a consistent approach. Because I do get concerned when I think about somebody coming up in front of three shops on the sidewalk Then there's a restaurant there. They have to go out into the street. Then there's a restaurant using a parking spot, but the sidewalk's empty, and they have to get back up onto the sidewalk to walk. So, I think those things have to be taken into consideration as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Sheffer. Commissioner Byrne, you had your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Quickly. I think as the businesses get the applications on Friday, and I think Commissioner Szymanowski was kind of saying this and asking this, but I think, the businesses, I'm sure, want some guidance from us. They want to know, where's the consensus? What do we support? What will we approve? And so it seems to me that at a minimum, we would want to end today, from my point of view, saying that, yes, we will support you utilizing parking spaces. Yes, we will support you in utilizing land that's adjacent or behind that you currently have. I mean, support in terms of, we will entertain your application. I think giving that kind of guidance, that kind of go-ahead, that kind of support is really important to our business community. They need to hear the support today.
I agree.
That's where I'm coming on.
Well put, Dick.
Now, I do agree that we need to be open and give them guidance. I think these are good ideas, but I don't think we can say specifically, yes, this is a done deal, because honestly, we don't know how many people want to do this. And I'm talking about the businesses. And because, as Commissioner Sheffer just said, somebody may want it against their building, but not in a parking space. Against their building may not make sense. Parking space doesn't make sense. If we're seriously giving consideration to the first 2 blocks in Rehoboth Avenue on the sidewalk side, I think we need to go to every business from 2nd Street, up around the boardwalk, back down to 2nd Street, and have a list. And if there's 150 businesses, storefronts, what do those 150 say? How many ask for an application? Then we know exactly what we can do. And so what I'm saying is, I think the city is open to what works best for all concerned. And if it's close, if all of those businesses want the space, then we've got to give some serious consideration of the loss of revenue for X number of days on those number of spaces. And if that's what the commissioners want to do, then we got to put this in front of the public and the staff. But we don't know enough about what's being asked specifically. And I think that's something we need to have on the table before we can say, this is what we're going to do. I'm open to suggestion on this. I think these ideas are good, but I don't think we can say, okay, we're all for it. We need them to tell us what they need.
Paul, I think Edward, why don't you jump in, because
done deal. It's an
Go ahead,
application.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
the businesses do need to know that we are open. That we
Right,
are,
and that's what I'm saying. We're open.
Them
Okay, so we just approach them individually. I mean, I don't think there's a big deal here. What's the problem?
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. We need to approach them individually, give them an application.
Right.
This is not rocket science.
Yeah, my feeling is if we walk around that 2 blocks on both sides and we offer an application to each one of them, we'll have an idea how many need space.
Then we should do it.
And at the end of the day, if there's 150 businesses on those first 2 blocks and 30 want space, then we got to think about it. If 110 want space, absolutely. So I think we have to give it, that some thought. And then also, what we need to come out of this meeting is about May 29th. I'd like to be able to get a motion to turn on the meters, turn on the permits, but we're not there yet. But I'm open to these ideas. Don't think that I'm not. It's how the logistics go into place. And again, if all of them or most of them want it and it makes sense for the city to get the businesses on their feet, yeah, it makes sense. But remember, throughout the summer, we have residents parking on Rehoboth Avenue, not that many. Businesses parking on Rehoboth Avenue, most of them will get a permit. We have people that want to go into the businesses, which is great. And we have beachgoers. So it's not just the businesses that need those spaces. It's all of those groups. Now, hopefully, if we do implement a plan like this and give the businesses spaces, well, then people will have to move out into the city, and that's great. But remember, people love to drive around for an hour on Rehoboth Avenue when there are plenty of spaces on Hickman or Virginia at 6:30 on a Saturday night. That's just the way people are. And a lot of businesses like to have the opportunity for their customers to park very close to their business. So I'm open to the idea. We just need to know what can be accomplished. And
So, Mary,
Commissioner
thank you.
Slaughter, your hand is up.
Thank you. I think I just want to be clear that it's fine that we give them applications walked out. What I think we're asking for consensus is is there consensus among the commissioners that the businesses can submit an application showing how they would use the parking spaces in front of their building? That's, I think, Edward, you can weigh in, but I think that's what we're trying to get consensus on. Dick, you might have said it better, and please jump in, Dick, because you said it very well. But I think that's what we want the businesses to hear and be able to respond to. Is there consensus that businesses should submit applications showing that how they would use, the parking spaces and sidewalk for outdoor seating? That's the question.
I would agree with that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yes.
I've said the same thing.
Great.
And it basically is, we have to have a plan. So just like the liquor board wants a plan of how many tables are going to go into X space, how are you going to fence that space off? How much do you really need? That's where the plan is. Then we'll be able to know. I mean, I don't think we can say right now, oh, Summer House wants 6 spaces. They can have it. I don't think that's where we are.
No.
No, I'm agreeing. There's consensus, Mayor.
We're not saying that, Mayor.
Yeah. No.
What's
Go ahead,
that?
Dick. Go ahead, Dick.
Mayor, we're in agreement. We're not saying it's a done deal. Let Summer House get 6. But we do want Summer House and the others to know that we will entertain, we will evaluate their proposals for
Absolutely.
using parking spaces and or using land that they already have that's adjacent.
Right.
Absolutely. And that's what this was all about, I think, was going out and doing a survey amongst the business crowd and finding out, yeah, in general, people would like that opportunity. Now, I'm saying that we as a commission and the city are welcoming their ideas.
Yes.
What are they?
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
And they use the application provided by the state that's coming out Friday, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, so Mayor, right, let me, I'm going to venture to say that we probably talked to about 80% of the businesses on the first 2 blocks of Rehoboth Avenue. And of those, all but 5 said that they would utilize the space if they were able to, and that they appreciated the city thinking about their needs as businesses. Now, I'm a little confused as to, and if you want a business by business, yes, no list of all of the businesses on this block, I mean, we can do that.
We need a plan from each one.
No, yeah, that'll come through the application process.
Right.
But how can we ask someone to submit an application? And with these applications, we're only talking about businesses, restaurants that serve alcohol. So what about the other?
No. I'm talking about all the businesses, every business.
They can all.
Every business submits an application for space on public space.
Yeah.
Every business on those 2 blocks.
And where is that application coming from?
State.
The state on Friday.
They'll
The
receive
state
it on
will have
Friday.
a common application.
So Edward, everybody's agreeing with your recommendation that we come to consensus on the use of parking spaces. So basically what the guidance is going to be to all the businesses is here, fill out this application. When you fill it out, you can assume you're using the sidewalk and the parking spaces to expand your outdoor seating or your retail wares or something along those lines. So that's what you asked for, correct? And I think that's what I'm hearing there's consensus for, is that we all agree that, yes, you should submit a plan, assuming you're going to be able to use the sidewalk and or parking spaces,
Correct.
whether you're retail or restaurant. So
Okay.
Edward, is that clear to you, or you want to?
No, that's clear now.
Okay.
But I think we need to give guidance whether we want that to be sidewalk or parking spaces.
Oh.
So we don't have all of these people
Got it.
resubmit plans or.
And Edward, you said it better than I did. And that's why when we talked about this before on a block by block base or whatever, but there has to be some consistency among those business owners on each block, because you can't have people going back and forth walking between parking spots and the sidewalk. And so what I'm suggesting is exactly what you said better.
And I would suggest that I agree with Commissioner Sheffer. It can't be a zigzag serpentine thing. I would suggest that we keep the sidewalks open. And if they need space on the street, that's what they consider. But again, a plan for that space on the street, because I think a lot of people will not want that. And that may cull some of these people out, because I don't know of a retail shop that's going to want their racks out in the parking spaces. Now, I think the restaurants will, because, they can't be that close. It's going to be right in the, I don't think anybody wants people to walk right by them on the sidewalk. So we are open to suggestion, but it's got to be within consistency, as Commissioner Sheffer said. So we are open to these applications to some people needing additional space so that they can have some tables. And,
Okay,
and I
so-
think that's how you go to the businesses. And whatever else.
Okay, so
Now, one second, if you don't mind. It's 5:17. I'd like to stop this meeting at 5:30, and we can talk about it more next week, and we'll have a better opportunity to hear from you all, because the application will be out. We do have a couple of people, and Carol already spoke, but we do have a couple of people that signed up to speak, and I'd like to give them their 3 minutes of time, if that's okay. Now, again, when I give them the 3 minutes of time, then we're going to have to come back, and I'm going to look for something like a motion to release the parking meters and permits so that they go into place for the 29th. Now, that doesn't say now all of a sudden we're talking about on Rehoboth Avenue, these people can't have spaces. Again, I think this is something that we need to put in place, and then we go forward, because we do have a lot of people coming this weekend, going to the beach, and again, it's closed. The parking is free this weekend, and we're going to see Rehoboth Avenue and a couple of these other places fill up with employees or beachgoers. Now, next weekend, I want everybody else to feel like they can park, and it's going to be easier to park on Rehoboth Avenue because the meters are up. So that's something to give some consideration to, and I'm going to go to the 2 speakers. First, Rick Perry. Is he still there?
Yes.
He's not? Yeah.
Yes, I'm here. I'll try to be brief. One, I applaud all of you for all the work that you're doing on this important matter. And I think that the efforts that were made by Rehoboth Beach Main Street, Commissioner Schlosser and Commissioner Shanowski, in doing the walk around and meeting with our businesses provides a lot of insight into their needs. As chair of the Planning Commission, and I'm speaking now not for the Planning Commission, but just my own views, I've been contacted by a number of the planning commissioners who are terribly concerned about the future of the city and what it will look like if our small businesses aren't given an opportunity to get back on their feet. And everyone is going to share in a much bigger burden if the city doesn't do everything within its power to enable them to utilize whatever space we have to assist them in getting revenue back and doing it in a safe way. Nothing is more important as a primary objective of city officials than the safety, health, and welfare of our entire community. And so I think I can, I read the Rehoboth Beach Main Street summary that Commissioner Shanowski provided. Again, I think it's very informative, and I'm pretty confident that it's going to lead to the conclusion that we need to make parking spaces available for our businesses for some period of time. Last thing is sort of a question, and I noted in that report that patrons seated were going to have to remain at their tables and couldn't get up to get their food or to get drinks, and could only get up to use the restrooms. And if there is a delay in the Alcoholic Beverage Commission providing any sorts of permits, I thought that restaurants were able to do to-go alcohol drinks now. And I realized that may require people to go up and get them handed to them out a window or something. But in the interim, couldn't the city just relax its open cup limitation and allow people to do that in lieu of the restaurants, having their permit to serve alcoholic beverages where people are seated? Just a question. Thank you.
I can answer that, I think, Rick. I don't see a problem with the alcohol beverage control if the applications are approved by the city and the restaurant already has something from alcohol beverage control to be able to be served there on the sidewalk. Alcohol beverage control does not want people walking around with their drinks. It's against the law even now. Yes, people can take out food and liquor from Purple Parrot or wherever they're going to take it out from, but they've got to go back to their car, take it back home to drink it. So, but that's something I'll discuss specifically with Chief Banks as far as that open carry. The next person is Tom Evans, please.
Thanks, Paul. Hope you can hear me. Too much to talk about, but I'm going to try to bullet it because you have a lot on your plate and nothing decided. So I'm going to go back to the easy stuff for me, which is for the restaurants in particular and businesses on commercial streets. Any loss of revenue from parking for the city should be considered amortized over not just this year, but multiple years. I'm not a business person, but losses are always amortized over multiple years. If we can't afford to take a loss this year, we should consider taking a loss over multiple years because we need those businesses to stay in business for the health of the city. Also, these are easier ones for me. I like to at least call out Dick Byrne for his comments on testing, which he and I talked about, and I know you talked about a little bit last time, that is a no-brainer for the state to test our service workers. I will say that I'm sympathetic to second homeowners who want to come to their homes, and I am not sympathetic for second homeowners that want to come to their homes to then prepare them to rent in short-term rentals. That seems to be diametrically opposed to each other. Just make sure you're also aware, because people keep not being clear about this, that the governor's 13th through 17th decrees on the emergency all are consistent, if you read the actual language of them, that masks are to be worn outside and in public anytime that they cannot social distance. So that, in fact, if I'm out of my house and somebody walks by me, I should pull my mask up. And I don't see masks more than 20% of the time in this city. And on the beach and the boardwalk in the last week, I have not seen masks even 50% of the time. But that's between the city and the state to be more clear about. And I am happy that we're going to have signs that say required, not some little logo at the bottom that might indicate that maybe you should have a mask, which is not up to standard. Also today, yesterday, in the last 3 days, the gazebos on the boardwalk did not have anything to mark them off as to not sit down.
No, they're open.
Date, maybe. And I think I got all the easy ones. The tougher ones, you still need to get something done in the next week or two. But be aware that, as somebody said earlier, people are not going to sit in the parking spaces to eat dinner just because it doesn't seem safe. In any other city in the world that I've been in, when they've expanded dining, if they do it in the parking area, they have jersey walls or some version of it. They're not going to sit next to a orange cone on Rehoboth Avenue, no matter what. So you have a very tough decision to figure out that, and I'm done, Paul.
Thank you very much, Tom. Appreciate it. Commissioner Szymanowski, you have your hand up.
Sure. So I think part of my confusion before was you said that anyone that wanted to use outdoor space would need to submit an application that will be provided by the state on Friday. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't see that in the governor's orders at all. It talks about restaurants and outdoor seating. I don't see where that a retailer would be filling out an application and providing it to the state.
It came out today in an announcement today, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
And in
I
that
mean,
announcement, I do not see retailers.
Okay, I will verify that. I apologize. That may be the case. However, I would like to think if any retailer wants to utilize some public space, they would also submit a plan to the city, because again, right now it's against the code to have anything on the sidewalk and therefore on the street. So the specific application is for the restaurants, is for alcohol beverage control. But the city will work with these businesses to make sure that they can get what they're asking for. But we just need to know what they're asking for, and they need to know what everybody else is asking for.
Okay, well, what I'm trying to do here, and I think what the community is asking for, is that we have a blanket understanding and approval. If you think that 300 businesses should be submitting applications or plans to the city when we're already short-staffed and they're working their butts off, I just don't see. Obviously, the restaurants have to, because they have to submit something further to the ABC board. But to say that we want plans from all of these retailers, I just see how that
again, I'm looking at the city having the opportunity to see what these businesses would like to have. Because if the businesses would like to put their racks against the building on the sidewalk and all the restaurants want to be in the parking spaces, we need to have a plan so that we know what we can accomplish. And again, we can't have it zigzag or serpentine. What we're trying to do is figure out if all of these people would like to use public space, what's the plan? It's kind of like, assume it's an urban planner asking for the plan of each business. We don't have an urban planner, but this is where it comes in. The city's going to have to look at each individual place and try to figure out what they need and what they don't need. And I apologize for making that assumption that the businesses need to fill out an application. It's just I think it would be very good for the city to have an idea of what a clothing store would like to use on the sidewalk. You know, they do this on sidewalk sale, and some of them already have an idea. I think it's a simple ask as you're going around to find out how many people want to utilize the space. Because I think you'll find that some of these businesses, once the 30% or the 60% works, won't need the space on the sidewalk. But again, that's up to the businesses, and I think if they can give us an idea of a plan, and I'm not saying architectural drawings, I'm saying, hey, how much space are you looking for? Where are you looking for? What are you going to do with it? Because if they're going to put something out on the street, they need to have some kind of a barrier as well. Because I don't know that they're going to put something out on the street and just use it. So again, I think it's a plan from the businesses.
Well, can we just modify the state's application to?
Again, I haven't seen it yet. We'll take a look at it on Friday, and it may have all the answers on it.
Right.
We absolutely do not need 250 retailers submitting a plan or an approval process to go before the city to utilize outdoor space. And I'm telling you that 80% of the businesses that we've talked to said that they would utilize space if we allowed them to use it, and if we gave them guidance. So if we decided here that we will allow the parking spaces to be pedestrian and that every business can have racks that abut no more than a few feet out from their storefront, and restaurants can have tables, every single business will utilize and appreciate that, with the exception of a few that would rather have the parking spaces. I don't know why we need a more specific plan.
The more there are, the more you need a plan.
And again, right now, if the businesses want to be up against the building and the restaurants want to be out in the street,
yeah, right.
You know, what do we do for ADA, walking, all that stuff? I think what we're going to see with a plan is 80% of the people want to use the street and 20% want to use the sidewalk. Then we can go to those 20% and say, hey, this is going to be more consistent with the city, because we want to be consistent.
We don't have time for that. We have to make a decision and say, you work with what we've decided or don't do it. We can't have applications come in and then say, okay, you 20%, no, you can't do it that way. You've got to do it this way.
Well, I disagree, but you know, it's open to the other commissioners.
So, Mayor, what would you like in order to move forward specifically?
All I'd like is an idea from every business along those 2 blocks of what they would utilize and what they would need. And if they want to utilize some outdoor space after June 1st, when all of a sudden at least 30% of their square footage is open.
So then a reality check, and maybe this is for the manager. Let's say we get 200 plus applications. What's the time frame to go through those and be able to provide feedback to the businesses, make some decisions?
I would think these applications or the recommendation of what they're trying to do would go through Main Street. Main Street would have a stack of applications for the restaurants, a stack of suggestions for the businesses, and then they can map it out on a little drawing and work with the city manager in building and licensing to make sure that it's all consistent.
Okay, so the applications are going to go to Main Street.
I saw it.
Well, I'm just trying to funnel them through one place. If they want to come right to the city, that's fine too. But I mean, I think from
I think we need some clarity on this.
Yeah. Can we simplify this?
Sure, Commissioner Cluzy.
So I actually agree with Tom Evans that people aren't going to want to eat in the street. So I think we could decide just decide that you can put tables in the sidewalk. Then that's it. You can
Pat, just really quick, just so you know, the majority of the restaurants said that they wanted to put tables in the parking spaces. Edward, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I heard. Just so you know, maybe I see where you're going, but I just want to give that data point out that I heard that.
Well, that's an important one. If that's what the majority of the restaurants want, then it's a surprise to me, but okay.
Well, and their staffs have to go through pedestrians to deliver food.
Yeah. Edward, is that, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, but I see where you're going, Pat, but I just want to give that data point.
That was, but now there's a new consideration, and that's that they have to submit plans that are ADA compliant to ABC. That's now clear. It wasn't clear a few days ago or even this morning.
Right. That's why the parking spaces will not make too much sense because
exactly.
Yeah.
So it has to be on the sidewalk now.
Yeah, my simplification on this is give us your plan of what you want to put on the sidewalk, and then we decide whether or not we're going to actually use the parking spaces as walking space, which if the sidewalk's blocked, we're going to have to do that.
Right.
So
right.
again, I think we're looking at, I won't pick streets at the moment, but if we're looking at, well, okay, I will. If we're looking at Wilmington, Baltimore, the building sides of Rehoboth Avenue, then that's where we can't zigzag it, right? So we have to just decide that we are going to not have parking in those areas, and we're going to say to them, okay, give us your plan for how many tables you want, give us your plan for how many racks you're going to put out there, or tables to sell whatever you're going to sell. Some of the retail people won't do that because people will walk off with things, so there are going to be some retail people who probably won't do that. Maybe a lot of them won't. Maybe the majority of them won't. I do not know. But it's clear to me that the only option is the sidewalk.
I'm good with that, Pat. I mean, if we all believe in the interpretation of the governor's guidance is, about the ADA compliance precludes, us from using the parking spaces. I think that simplifies it, as long as this is something we can get done quickly for the businesses. So my question, I'll go back to the question to the city manager. If we get this form on Friday or whatever, we ask for the application, as Pat stated, can we get this done and approved and reviewed by June 1st for the businesses? That's what I'd like to understand, so that they're not there's not too much of a burden on them.
Well, certainly it's time sensitive, and there's going to be a burden on staff, but I haven't seen the form, so I don't know what's involved in the form. I can't really answer that. If it's a simple diagram or, there's multiple questions, I don't know if it's 1 page or 3 pages. I really don't. I mean, we'll do what we can to work with the businesses as best we can, but without seeing the form, I don't know what it's going to look like.
So, Edward, is that are you good with Pat's suggestion? Does that mean if we say, our goal is to, you submit an application on how you'll use the sidewalk, whether you're retail or restaurant, and our goal is to get, give you approval by June 1st. Goal, and sharing a goal. And does that, Edward, meet your requirement or what you think you heard?
Sounds really bad. You're not coming through, Lisa.
You're not coming through. You sound like, I don't know, the Wizard of Oz or something.
It's a brilliant thing I've said in 3 years. I don't know if I can repeat it, but I'll try.
No, I got your point.
Yeah, I think we got, yeah.
Lisa, your audio is hardly working.
Okay.
So I think I got the point. If we say that we're going to utilize the sidewalks for, to allow restaurants and others, I think that's all the businesses or the restaurants need to know so they can come up with a diagram, submit it to the city, so then they can submit it to the ABC for approval. And I think that's perfectly fine. But I think if is, and this is where I'm saying I think the decision can be more, it can be simple. If we're going to allow businesses to utilize the sidewalk, then unless we have this zigzag approach, we're almost saying that then we have to have people walking in the parking spaces.
Yep.
Correct.
Right. And then why do we need retailers to submit a plan? We can tell them that you can encroach a few feet off the storefront for racks. We don't need
You can do that. That's fine. Unless they want to do something else.
Yeah, but with that plan, basically, are we walking away from this meeting saying the building side of Rehoboth Avenue and first block and second block, both sides, we are offering that to be closed to parking for the next, say, at least June 1st to June 15th or June 30th? Because that's what it does by putting everybody on the sidewalk. That forces everybody to walk in the street. And, I think that's way out there. And I can't even support thinking about that.
Well, and I would just chime in, Mayor, that I think before we do any of that, we certainly need to the chief needs to contact LDOT to see what they're going to say about pedestrian access and walking in the street. So that needs to be done too.
And that's just for the avenue. Is that correct? Because we control Baltimore and Wilmington. Is that right?
Yes.
People are walking in the street or walking in
This,
parking spaces that we need. You still can't hear me?
we can hear you. It's so muffled.
That's squirrely to me. I mean, basically, that takes away the walkway. I think we have to make sure that the sidewalks are open, and do people want to utilize spaces on the street? Again, because if we're going to do something like everybody can be on the sidewalk, that means we are closing off the parking period for as long as we do this. And I don't know if that's something that we even want to focus on. I mean, I can see allowing businesses to utilize spaces, but just cutting them all off completely when we have maybe 10 on a side of restaurants utilizing the space on the sidewalk. Yeah, yes, some of the retailers will use it, but we have to think about logistics for the city and from a safety perspective. And we have to think about the public. Some people won't want to walk out in the street. People like to utilize the sidewalks. And our sidewalks in most of the areas aren't wide enough to have pedestrian traffic, again, split by 6 feet or so, and to have tables on the sidewalk. And I think that's why, as I was looking at this, I was looking at spaces out in front of each business, on the street. And again, having the sidewalk just straight through, and maybe we want to let the retail put a rack against the building and it only takes 1.5 feet. I don't know. But, in utilizing specific spaces for each restaurant's needs. But again, it's open to the commissioners to talk about it, but I don't think we can go and say that we're giving up the sidewalks completely. Let's see, Commissioner Schlosser, your hand is up. Oh.
I don't know if you can hear
there you
me.
go. It's working now.
It is. Yeah. This is weird, but no, I think that's exactly the intent of where we may be going here, Mayor, is allowing for all the parking spaces adjacent to the sidewalk to be blocked off.
Yeah.
That's exactly the intent of where we're going, or where this may go, and probably will go based on the feedback that we've had so far.
Yeah, and again, I think reality check is that if an important component of doing this is certainly helping the businesses, yes, we don't have to continue to say that. The other important component is to stop the spread of the virus. That's not going to happen by June 15th or June 30th. I don't think that's realistic. I think we have to think much longer term, maybe season even. So that, I just think that's the way it is. No, regardless of what phase 2 or phase 3 say in terms of who can come into a restaurant. I also think that a good share of the public that want to go out to eat are not going to want to go inside. They're going to be fearful of that. But with the outside opportunity, I think that provides our businesses with business opportunity. Another reality, I think, in the environment that we're in.
And I agree with that concept, outdoors, no question. Commissioner Gay, you had your hand up.
I'm concerned that I know that you wanted to come out of the meeting today with an agreement about the putting the parking meters on the 29th and the permits, et cetera. But you also mentioned earlier that, or somebody mentioned, maybe it was Mr. Snowski mentioned earlier, that if we block off the parking spaces, then people will just park elsewhere in the city. And that was a reason why we wouldn't use revenue. I can tell you that the people in the neighborhoods will probably have a problem with that. And I agree with what the mayor said. They're not likely to do that because they don't do that now when they have the option to do it. Instead, they circle around, they try to find parking. So, while they could expand further into the neighborhoods to find parking, they, A, may not do it, and B, it does nothing but create more crowds in the neighborhood, whereas one of the biggest questions and or suggestions that I've gotten in the last few weeks is that we need to be looking at using parking to limit crowds purposely this summer. So while that could happen in the business district, if all the parking spaces are marked off, the other idea that's come up is charge more for the permits. Or do we really want to encourage as many people as would normally park in town? I think a lot of people are looking at us, and a lot of other cities are doing this. I mean, Cape May is utilizing their beach parking and only allowing 50% of the parking capacity in that lot. So I don't know how we can come out of the meeting today with an agreement about the meters and permits if we haven't looked at those issues. But those are also issues related to closing off the parking for pedestrian use too. So I just throw that out there. It's not simply a matter of saying, well, we'll just close them off, because it does lead to some other issues, and we have to be prepared for that.
I agree. And my comment before was just that it wasn't a black and white loss of revenue. People would park other places. Some may not, but it wasn't as clear.
Well, and it's not a loss of revenue if we raise the permit prices and can make some of it back that way too. It's just again, it's kind of we have to consider all pieces of that. Yeah.
Number one, we should definitely increase the daily pass. That's the one we've needed to increase for a long time.
Is that city manager? Could you tell us what that is right now? Sorry, not to put you on the spot.
I think it's $30 a day.
A day, and it was 36 if you're parking all day in a
metered space.
Metered space.
Yeah. It's around $28.
And again, we'd have to change our ordinance. We've already started selling permits.
Yeah.
But those are summer passes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And again, we're kind of getting off track.
Yeah.
And so again, we're looking probably away from starting the meters, which again, I think until we have a specific plan, I think we put the meters and the permits into place. We can always turn them off in certain things, and we can always go along Rehoboth Avenue and close off all those spaces if people need all those spaces. But we can't come back and ask for the revenue later on. And I think it's going to be important to just, as much as possible, have control over where people park, because people will move to either the neighborhoods with their passes or to other streets, or they'll take the park and ride if that's available. So I can't throw the revenue out with the bathwater. But again, that's one thing. And again, we're getting later. But I know the commissioners would like us to be able to get back to the businesses with what we're open to. And I think what we're open to is show us a plan. And maybe the small businesses don't show us a plan, but they're going to want to see what the restaurants are going to do, because they may want space too. And I personally think it would be very difficult to completely give up the sidewalk. But again, the commissioners can have that discussion.
I'll make a motion. I'll go ahead and make a motion that we turn the meters on May 29th.
Second.
No. Point of order. We haven't answered the mayor's question on what we're going to get back to the businesses on. These guys are losing their livelihood. We're worried about our parking revenue when our budget's pretty healthy. Yes, it's a big deal. I mean, obviously, but let's come to the consensus and be clear about what we're going to do for the businesses and close that conversation out, please.
But again, these are two separate subjects.
Separate issues, yeah.
Yeah. The issue about what we're going to do for the business, we've already kind of come to a consensus that we would all like to do something for the business. What we're trying to do is to get a consistent plan. The parking meters and the permits are for more than anything else, the visitor, because we're going to have visitors coming in, going to the beach, and that's where we're going to get most of our revenue these days. So that's why that is separate. And again, I'm not, poo-pooing the idea of having space for the businesses. I'm open to suggestion. I just think we need to put together a plan, and I don't agree with giving up the sidewalk, but if there's 6 votes or 4 votes to give up the sidewalk completely, we've got to see that, but I just don't know that that's the right plan. I think we need to know where the businesses are, and I think that'll be very important. I don't think it's that difficult to ask. Now,
Mayor, and then I'll let you guys vote on the parking meters. But so the plan is we're going to ask the businesses, both restaurants and retailers, to submit a plan with a schematic, assuming that they can use the sidewalk for either outdoor seating or for their retail wares. Is that correct?
Or the park. I mean, the mayor is interested in the. So I hear that it makes more sense from a logistics standpoint to give them the better option of using the parking space.
Yeah, I mean,
is that right?
I think we have to offer the sidewalk to pedestrians. I don't think we can change the way we have our traffic going. So again, offering spaces to the businesses is different than having the space wide open just to walking. This isn't, I don't look at this like I look at Baltimore and Wilmington. It would be easy to open up, say Baltimore on the 2nd block and just get rid of all those parking spaces and just have that for walking. You'd have to have a barrier on both sides because of traffic and protection. But there's not that many restaurants on that one block. I don't know if any of those even want outdoors. They probably would, and so they wouldn't want us to do it that way. However, that's different. It's, having a plan on Rehoboth Avenue and knowing the specifics of it. And I think we have to build around a starting point. And I think we have to focus on the small sidewalks that we have. If people want to put their wares for food out in the parking spaces, we can work with them. But I don't say taking away the pedestrian way just for businesses
Okay, I'm just confused, Mayor. Commissioner Calusi suggested that we put out guidance. I thought that you can use the sidewalk for tables or your wares. I thought that's where we came to.
That is what I said, but then there was a discussion that it wasn't really made as much sense because logistically it was more difficult. On the avenue in particular, although I think I heard you just say on Baltimore and Wilmington, you feel a little bit differently about.
So what's the guidance we're going to put out to the businesses now?
I'm going to stop here because Mr. Mendelis would like to say something.
All I'm doing is interrupting the discussion because there's a motion and a second on the parking meters, and you're discussing that this should be limited to that, and then move on to your discussion about sidewalk and parking if you want.
Okay.
I would include that motion first.
Okay. As Mr. Mendelis has said, we have a motion and a second on the table to move forward with starting up the permits and the meters across the city as of May 29th. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on that subject?
Yes, Mayor?
Yes, sir.
So can I assume from the maker of the motion and the second that this motion assumes that parking spaces may be given up to restaurants?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. That's something that we'll work on for the future.
Okay, so for clarity's sake, I think that should be included in the language of the motion.
I will amend my motion to say that the meters will be turned on May 29th with the proviso that we will give businesses parking spaces for their use if needed. Does that satisfy?
Can I add one thing? The current modification of the mayor's order says that the meters will be off through May 29th. So we start them on June 1 rather than.
It'll be May 30th.
You mean
May
30th?
30th.
May 30th. I'm sorry, May 30th.
Okay.
Can you revise the motion to May 30th, please?
Yes.
Start all over.
Okay. So I make the motion that we turn the meters on May 30th. We will give businesses, with the proviso that we'll give businesses the opportunity to use parking spaces. Therefore, those meters will not be used on those spaces.
Is this also permits going on the same date?
Yes.
Okay.
Add that.
Adding permits also.
Yep. And then Commissioner Sheffer,
Second.
you had the second?
Yes.
You seconded. All right. So we have a motion and a second on the table to turn the meters and the permits on as of May 30th with the proviso that we will be working with the businesses here in town that may want to utilize the spaces on the street that have meters on them. Any further discussion? If not, Commissioner Sheffer.
Aye.
Commissioner Calusi.
Aye.
Commissioner Schlosser.
No.
Commissioner Gay.
Aye, with the caveat that I would hope that we could revisit daily passes and the rates as needed before they go on, between now and when they go on.
That'll go on the record. Commissioner Byrne.
Aye.
Commissioner Szymanowski.
Aye.
I vote aye, and the motion carries. Now let's go back and focus on, if we can, from a timing perspective, on the plan forward. And again, the application for restaurants will be coming out on Friday, and it will have some proviso to work with the alcoholic beverage control. Again, I apologize for saying that was required for the businesses. What I was trying to say was we need to ask the businesses about their needs, because if we don't need them, then the restaurants may want to use their space. But I think we need to have a plan, because that's, 4 full blocks, if you will, of businesses. And I think, you know, depending on how many businesses are in each block, maybe as many as 20 or 30, we could have a total of 100. And so I think would be best for the city, as well as the alcoholic beverage control, as well as logistically for police and whatever, to have an idea of what people would be using the space for. So that's my point. And then Commissioner Sheffer.
Yeah,
Your hands up.
I understand both discussions about whether the sidewalk should be used for pedestrian traffic and the spaces in front. And so I can support having the guidance to the businesses being using the parking spaces in front of their businesses. But I would also suggest that regardless of which way we go with this, that it's got to be for the whole block, because I wouldn't feel comfortable sitting at a table trying to enjoy a meal and having somebody in a big SUV trying to parallel park in the spot next to where I'm sitting. And so that's the only thing I want to offer to this. But I think we need to do the best we can, and I think it needs to be consistent so I can support either position on whether it's the parking spots or whether it's the sidewalk.
Commissioner Szymanski.
Thank you. Mayor, I'd like to, I guess, give my input on the parking spaces versus sidewalk. And I've gone back and forth and struggled with this a bit. And it's something I thought about a lot this weekend going around. And I do agree. I think that the pedestrians should be on the sidewalk. My one concern with Rehoboth Avenue, which isn't the case on Wilmington and Baltimore, is that those curbs are probably about a foot high. And that is very much a walking hazard. If we've got pedestrians in those parking spaces and they're going up to the sidewalk or down, not only it's not consistent from one end of the block to the other end of the block. It's not just parking spaces. There's at least 2 bump outs on each where it comes out with a tree and some mulch or some other structure in them. So that's several layers of a foot high curb that people would have to walk up and then down again and vice versa. So I agree that we need to keep the sidewalks open for pedestrians. So I think the guidance is we ask the businesses, or the restaurants specifically, to provide a plan on what they would do in the parking spaces, how many they would need or want, how they, what type of materials they would use to block it off, some heavy duty planters in the corners with some fencing, so that vehicles, can't strike in any event, some sort of blockade, without it being a typical blockade. And then, and we know that every business is going to every restaurant is going to utilize that. What I will get is some clarity on all of the retail shops. If we allowed them to use the parking spaces, how many of them would like to do that or not? And then I think that will help us determine whether all of the parking spots should be blocked off or not. And again, as the restaurants are going to want to use it all summer long, that's for sure. But the more capacity that retail shops are allowed to have indoors, the less need or want they're probably going to want to have to utilize outdoor space. So that allows us the flexibility that over time we may block off a section for the restaurants, and then we can unblock the areas that retail shops have been using the parking spot. So I think that's a good way to move forward. I think it provides clarity for the restaurant so they can start putting plans together.
Except for one thing, okay, if I can interrupt, because it relates to what you're saying, particularly about the parking spaces. There are a couple restaurants like Mariachi has a parking lot next door to them. They could use that space instead of.
Austin White.
Right, and that I believe that's the consensus that I said I think we all had, that that properties can utilize any outdoor space that they already have.
Oh, okay. When you
we're only
said
talking
guidance
about.
to when
we're
you
only
said
talking
guidance
about
to use the
public.
parking space, I was a little confused. That's
Yeah,
all.
I mean metered parking spaces on
Okay.
city property.
Thank
So
you.
there's consensus right now that any restaurant or business can use, even if they're not currently permitted, they can use any on-premise space to put you for outdoor seating or otherwise. Correct? There's consensus on that. So that's one thing.
Lisa, I think it'd be better to say that they can apply.
To the
use it, because we need to see what they're proposing.
Even on-premise, you think they should apply, or they should just?
Yes.
I think the state has asked for that. Yeah.
Yeah,
They
that's
have to
exactly
anyway.
what the state application is for any
Okay.
restaurant,
All right.
bar,
Okay.
pub, et cetera, that wants to expand outdoor seating.
Okay.
Does everyone agree with that? Can we just do a shake of heads?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So the one expansion I would ask of that is that if there's a neighboring property that has outdoor space and they allow the restaurant to utilize it, that we allow that to happen as well.
Yeah, that's a legal issue, as long as somebody signs a document, and obviously Mr. Mendelis can put that together. But just so, I mean, I know somebody may say, yeah, you can use my property, but it may be somebody that's leasing the property. As long as we can get some signature from the property owner that we have on record, I would think that would be fine. But I don't want to just give it a carte blanche that, yeah, that's fine.
And that's part of the application too, right? They would have to.
I would think so, but, you know, I don't know.
Yeah.
I agreed. If you know, with the input from the city solicitor on whatever language we waiver we may require or authorization, that we would allow that. Because I do know that there's several businesses that are not restaurants that have a ton of outdoor space, and they are willing to, you know, let neighboring properties utilize it. I'm assuming that they're going to want to be held harmless and sign a sublease or something, whatever the case may be. But that we would at least, as a city, allow them to do that.
Yeah, we would definitely work with them, you know, through the legal issues.
So, and it seems like we're all in agreement with that then. So my takeaway here is the guidance we're going to give for at least the businesses on Rehoboth Avenue is that if they want to use parking spaces, they're going to come up with a plan, which they're going to need to submit to the state anyway, or to the city for approval and then the state. And then, Mayor, I think instead of an actual plan, is it fine if we just utilize Main Street to come up with what each retail business may want to do or not do?
I would think we do not need a motion and a vote for something like this. There is a consensus of the members of the council that, you know, this is kind of what we're looking at for the businesses. So I see this as you can voice that specific to Main Street, to the businesses, that the city is willing to work. The application hopefully is going to come out from the governor on Friday. We can get that out to you, to all the businesses, so that we can hear from them what they're looking for. I'm sure they can submit it to the city. It might be a better avenue to submit directly back to you, and we've put them all in a stack. But obviously, from a timing perspective, whatever works for them, if they can put something on the table and then give that to us, I'm sure that the city will work with them on that.
Great. My question was related, Mayor, to the non-restaurant businesses. If I can just, instead of having them submit a plan, we utilize Main Street to gauge what each one of them may want to do.
Yeah, as far as space is concerned and how they're going to utilize that space. Does that work?
Yeah, I'll end with one of my suggestions that I made, and I asked businesses as we were walking around, if the city were to charge a minimal fee per space per day, if they would do that. And I only mention that so that we don't have a bunch of people saying that they want to use the space, and then they don't, and we're blocking it off or not allowing people to park there, that there's some sort of buy-in to the utilization of the space. And it's not perceived that we're just giving stuff away.
I think it sends the wrong message, frankly, if we're charging them. I just don't. They've got enough problems.
I think that's counterintuitive.
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's a small amount, wouldn't matter anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
Good point.
Nobody's got their hand up. Any other comments before we summarize this? Okay, I don't see any. I'm going to summarize this. Obviously, we have taken a vote on the parking meters and the permits. They will go into practice on May 30th. As far as moving forward, we're going to have another meeting, I would assume, at 3 o'clock next Tuesday. I don't think it'll be as long as this meeting, and I'm sorry to the city staff for being so long. Again, hopefully by next Tuesday, the application will be in people's hands. We'll be able to get from Edward and Main Street a better idea of how many businesses want to utilize space, what they're looking at. Maybe even some restaurants can talk about a specific need and how they're going to accomplish that. And obviously we'll have the application, so we'll see exactly what they're asking. I think what they're going to probably ask is, how many diners are you going to put there? How many tables? How it's going to be set up? What type of barrier? I would imagine those are the type of things that are going to be asked in the application, but I don't know for sure. We'll know that better on Friday. If there's nothing else, I'd like to adjourn the meeting, but if there are any other comments, anybody?
I just like to just follow that with, we kind of ignored the people on Baltimore and Wilmington, and I apologize for that. But I'm going to give the same guidance to those businesses. If they want to utilize the parking spaces, that they'll be submitting plans for that, or providing guidance. Are we all in agreement with that?
Yes.
I was for all the businesses on those three streets, the way I looked at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Never suggesting otherwise.
Well, there's also like First Street. There's also
anybody anywhere.
Yeah, First and Second Streets.
First and second.
So it's really the commercial, all the commercial businesses.
Yeah, the commercial district.
Yeah.
Well, First and Second Street, we got to be very careful there because it's so narrow to begin with. And that's pretty much of a throughway. So yes, let's work with them. If it comes up, I'm open to suggestion on that, but we just have to be very careful because those streets are a little bit different than Rehoboth Avenue.
Yeah.
They're a little bit different than Wilmington and Baltimore. But you know, let's, you may get people on the fourth block of Rehoboth, same thing. And that's my big fear is we're offering it to the people in the first two blocks. What if spotty people want it on the avenues and stuff? I think all of this needs to be taken into consideration from your membership as well. And I'm not saying, yes, let's offer it. Let's not offer it. We've been talking about the first two blocks of the commercial district, and I think that's our focus today and should be as we come into the meeting next week.
I actually assumed it was all businesses, so I'm glad you brought that up. But Edward, what do you think?
No, I agree. It should be all businesses. I think when we were, in the concept of taking away parking for more, it wasn't just for businesses to utilize a space. It was, we're looking at the most congested area of Rehoboth, and how do we promote and allow social distancing while also allowing the businesses to utilize more outdoor space. So yes, the first two blocks of Rehoboth was kind of focused, I guess, from that perspective. But yeah, I mean, if we're going to allow businesses to use parking spots, it should be throughout the entire city.
Yeah, and I would think, again, if Main Street goes out to these businesses and has X number of businesses come to the floor and ask for that, I think the city will work with them once they fill out the application.
Right.
Yeah.
Any other further questions, comments? If not, thank you very much. This meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Yep,
Good
thank you
evening.
very much.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, Dick.